Slow Blacksmith Life in Another World. Volume 5. Cart and Asmodean's Sword. Chapter 130. First in a long while. Since the initial greeting to welcome Liddy was done, we decided to take the day off from work and have a welcome party. But before that, as everyone is dirty in our own way, we decided to clean off the dirt on us first. I felt nostalgic boiling water in this magical furnace. After distributing the boiled water to everyone, we went to our respective rooms to wipe ourselves down and remove the dirt on us. The guest room will be Liddy's room for the time being. And as expected, being the only male in the house, I was the first one to finish wiping myself off. I better start preparing dinner then. There is a 10-day blank, but on the contrary, my body remembers the actions well enough because it's only that long. However, it's one thing to feel your body move half on its own, and another thing to feel nostalgic. As for the women, Reich and Liddy were the first to come to the living room. Well, blacksmithing is also work where you'll get dirty and sweaty. It is better for boss to take a rest. Reich told me that. It's been a while since I've done this, so let me do it. I refused. I'm not tired with anything else as we just traveled back today while Reich was working properly. Thus I hope that she could take a rest. How about studying magic with Liddy? From now on, she can teach you as much as you want. Liddy nods when she hears that. I thought she liked teaching people, and apparently, my impression wasn't wrong. It seems that Reich couldn't resist the temptation, so side by side at the table in the living room, Liddy and Reich started to watch the flow of magical power. Seeing that, I go back to preparing dinner again. I hope this kind of scene will become a new and usual one. When I finished preparing the soup and as I started preparing to make unfermented bread, I glanced at the living room. Samir and Diana are now also in the living room, and they joined the study session of Reich and Liddy. From what I could see, Reich was the most receptive, followed by Diana and then Samir. I feel that this may be due to the difference in magical power of their races. Supper was then completed, so we all lined up on the table. It's not as sumptuous as the meal at Imel House that I ate last night, although it seems to be rather simple because this is the family style. This is the menu and taste of Aizu Workshop, which Liddy has also eaten before. It's a welcome party, so there's also something like a brandy made from pickled fruits. The welcome party eventually doubled as my expedition story session. This is because 3 people wanted to hear about it. I don't have to hide the details of the battle inside the cave to these 3, so I honestly told them what I had defeated. The reason why Liddy came to our house was also explained in the flow of the expedition report. We are here too. You can talk to us about anything. When Diana heard that, with tearful look, she immediately said that to Liddy. Other than Liddy, Samir was also in a delicate situation, but everyone came here on their own initiative. Liddy was the only one who had to come here without a choice. Aizu is the only man here, so let's take it easy. Yeah, I think Samir should learn to be a little more graceful. Samir and Reich also encouraged Liddy. Reich makes fun of the sullen Samir, Diana calms her, and Liddy looking at them is now smiling. Life from now on will probably go well. I had no proof, but I was convinced so. The next day, I was able to sleep in my bed for the first time in a while, so I went out to fetch water while feeling refreshed. The morning air in the forest feels good. When I returned from the lake with water, Liddy put her hand on the tree and was taking in some magical power. Good morning, Liddy. Good morning. At the welcome party yesterday, I told Liddy that we didn't need to use honorifics, but she said, this is my natural tone, so that being the case, it went like that. I know it's just yesterday, but if you have any concerns about living here, please tell me immediately. Everyone is kind and I'm not worried when I think about when I came here before. I see. That's good then. So we go back to each other's work. With such a sense of distance from Liddy, I think we need to connect more with her. After finishing the morning preparations and meals, I will resume with blacksmithing work from today. But, before that, I took out the statue of the goddess I made during the expedition from my luggage and put it on the Kamadana. It is another housemate, god housemate, who joined us this time. When enshrined in such a place, the atmosphere looks different. When did you make this? Samir asked in an amazed tone. On the way to the expedition. Well, I had time to do it. You can make something like this too, boss. There's a certain charm on it, huh? Somehow I feel a magical power on it. Although the women commented on it, it was not a bad evaluation, so we all worshipped as it is. All right. Let's do our best again today. Chapter 131. One's usual job. After the morning worship, Samir and Diana went hunting. Reich has made enough stock on general models in the past 10 days, and I also made a lot of money from this expedition, so I decided to let her stop the production for the delivery and make her practice with Liddy on how to put magical power. Instead, of course, I will be making the high-end model ones. After devoting myself on it for 4 days, starting from today, I plan to go to Camilo for delivery. It will be sufficient for Camilo's business, even if I only secure the number of general models anyway. I started to prepare for work, but unlike in the branch office, I was able to proceed with the preparation quickly. Sure enough, there is really a difference between a place with proper workplace and a place without one. There is also a big difference in the tools that are available. When it's all set, I first heat up the sheet metal, and when it's hot enough, I start making knives. Repair and production are somewhat different, but the way of hitting the hammer remains the same. Even so, it is a work that I am accustomed to, of course. And in this familiar environment, my efficiency is much different from that in the branch office. It's hard not to inadvertently make a custom-made one. While Reich and I were handling the steel, Liddy exchanged a few words with Reich, and she suddenly came out, and then she came back as if nothing had happened. When I asked her what she did, she told me that she went to check on the mint. As expected, the mint has a strong vitality. So much. Liddy nods when I asked her. Although it seems that it has hardly been maintained, it is growing quickly. Liddy says with a slightly happy face. Such a place really fits the image of an elf. I think it's better to manage the field early. I guess we should build a warehouse as well. Also, if I take a break from delivery for about 2 weeks, we should be able to build more things. Now that my family has grown, I'd like to stockpile as much as possible. I'd like to keep the dried meat there. Perhaps it would be better to say that we'll have delivery every 2 weeks for a while. We'll go ahead and build what we want to build. It is said that there is a suspicious bandit wandering around, so it is better to reduce the chances of encountering them. The only inconvenience is if it affects Camilo's business. Even so, we have already wholesaled a considerable amount to Camilo. It seems that he has enough sales channels to sell them to, but I think he will not need that many in 2 weeks. If it becomes a problem, I'll think about it then. After making some high-end model knives, I focused on creating a custom model knives. There was no separate order. It's for Liddy. Although I am just somehow feeling it, I hit the sheet metal as I put in some magical power into it and form its shape. Both heating and forging are tasks that use cheats to identify the last-minute line, and even if it is a larger one, since I have made custom-made model knife many times before, the production proceeds smoothly. As usual, I added an engraving in the shape of a cat. In the end, compared to the high-end model, it only took a little longer to make. It would be quite risky if I mass-produce 50 of these in a week or so. Liddy. Now that the custom-made knife is finished, I called Liddy, who has been practicing Reich on how to put magic into the knife. What is it? This is the knife I'm giving as a proof of being part of my family. I'll give it to Liddy as well. I handed the knife to Liddy. Liddy received it and she began observing the knife. Well, it's only recently that it became like a family token, or rather, it became so when I gave it to them for self-defense. It cuts very well, so handle it with great care. I then vertically swung down my own knife into the wood. The knife splits the wood into 2 noiselessly. Liddy's eyes widened for a moment in her surprise, but she quickly regained her composure and in a calm voice, she said, "I understand. Thank you." Then, as if she received something precious, she placed it close at hand. After finishing today's work, I was cleaning up when a clang-clong sound echoed as the clappers in the workshop were triggered. I guess Samir and Diana are back. Shortly after, the door connecting the house and the workshop opened, and then Samir and Diana came in. We greeted each other with, "I'm home then, welcome home. How was your day?" I asked. But since they were out until this hour, they must have caught something. "It's a deer today. A big one. You did it again, huh? It must have been a pretty big prey," as Samir proudly declared it. Diana also talks about its size from a different direction. "We had a hard time though. Really, thanks for your hard work. We're also going to clean up here and go in later, so you guys wash up first." Yes. Understood. When I declare the end of today's work, 4 voices echoed. It's a little interesting that the words are different between the hunting group and the production group. In this way, a new usual began again. Chapter 132. A Growing Family. The next morning. After finishing the morning preparation and worship, we head to the lake to pull up the game. There are 5 of us, just like the last time Liddy was here before. Perhaps because we had done it once, we were able to pull up the deer smoothly. Even though the 3 of them are strong women, it wouldn't have gone so smoothly with just 3 people. That reminds me of how difficult it is normally. Once we brought it home, the rest of the day went as usual. However, this time, I asked Liddy to dismantle it with Samir and Reich for her to get used to the knife. Diana and I will take the processed meat inside the house and clean up the unnecessary bones and stuff. This knife cuts really well, doesn't it? Liddy says in a whisper, but her voice is clearly audible. Of course. Boss's custom-made products are amazing. It's Reich, not me, who proudly brags about it. This kind of thing is becoming a normal scene. I don't feel bad to be praised for what I made diligently, but I'm still embarrassed. I wish I myself could say from the bottom of my heart that I was the one who made it. Since the game was successfully turned into meat, I made something like a roasted meat for lunch with brandy made from pickled fruit. It is still popular with our meat lover girls. Liddy didn't dislike it, and she also ate it deliciously. Apparently, she also likes the taste. I wonder if I should serve this on small special occasion from now on. After we had our lunch, we spent time doing whatever we wanted to do. I'm working at the smithy for the delivery production, and Reich is working with Liddy to study, so what we're doing is not much different from yesterday, it's just that the time is shorter. It seems that Samir and Diana are training on swords. Samir teaches Diana how to use a bow, and Diana teaches Samir how to use a sword. They are doing so in order to improve their skills in case of emergency, that's what Diana explained. Considering the story I heard from Camilo just before I got home, it seemed like a good idea to have them do that. I hope they'll do their best to increase our chances of returning home safely when we go back and forth on the road. The day ended with me making a good number of knives, and Reich seems to be able to put more magic into it than before too. I think I'll be able to retire from making high-end models soon. I said to her jokingly. No, I haven't been able to do it to the point where the material is used to the maximum. Reich replied with a serious face. Well then, I think I too have to do my best for her not to surpass me. But, I'm a cheat though. For the next 2 days, to make high-end short swords and long swords, I had Samir and Diana pour the molten iron while I did the rest. I feel that Samir and Diana's dexterity has improved again in these last few days. It seems that they are getting the knack of it from what they learned during mass production. If this is the case, it would be helpful if they could help me from time to time. If they can do the pouring of molten iron and deburring process when they have free time, it will be easier for me or Reich to finish it later. That way, we can have a complete free day about once a week, and we can make it a holiday. It's like a dream come true. While I'm thinking about such things, Reich and Liddy said that they would take a break from studying magical powers and maintain the fields in the courtyard, so I said that I leave it to them. I'm always thankful for this. Then the day when we'll go to Camilo's store for wholesale came. The inventory that Reich made in these past 10 days is quite large. Reich had come a long way in terms of the speed at which she is making general models. We then load them up and we start pulling the cart. As usual, it's my and Reich's job. I told them about the roaming bandit, and I asked the other 3 to be more vigilant than usual. There is a possibility that the rumored bandit has entered the forest. Speaking of which, that bandit attacks people, but there is no major damage, so what will they do after they catch him? While pulling the cart, I ask such question. From what I heard, that bandit did not cause any trouble. If you say he attacked someone, he should have caused injuries even a little, so he'll be punished for that. But if it's the same damage as if it was a drunken brawl in the street, I think he would only end up entering the prison for a day or 2. Diana answered my question. I see, it will be charged with assault, huh? But it seems that it happens often, and the punishment is not that serious, sort of. Then, as that guy is just looking for something, he won't be given much punishment even if they catch him, huh? I can't say for sure because I don't know what that bandit is up to at the moment. However, that should be the case. I see. However, if the number of people going back and forth on the main road decreases, it will affect the circulation. As soon as Marius came back from the expedition, he already has this problematic incident. I know it will be difficult, but I hope he'll do his best. Whether because of the extra lookouts, or thanks to the work of the city guards, or maybe because the bandit was caught, we were able to arrive in the town without any problems. The guard standing guard at the entrance was a man I had seen several times before. He looked a bit surprised when he saw Lydie, an elf, but he didn't say anything further. He was probably busy dealing with that rumored bandit. He may have tried to ask for reinforcements, but they had already left on an expedition. The reinforcements might arrive in a little while, so he'll just have to be patient until then. We bowed to him and then we proceed inside. We proceed to Camilo's shop in the town, but Lydie got a lot of attention along the way. Even if it's once every 2 weeks, will the residents of the town get used to it if we come regularly? Well, I hope that would be the case. No one particularly caused trouble on us, so we arrived at Camilo's shop safely. As usual, we put the cart in the warehouse, talked to the clerk, and then we headed straight to the negotiation room. After a while, Camilo and Clark-san came. Yo, it's been a long time, isn't it? I got on your wagon the other day. But yeah, it's been a while since I met you here. Are the items as usual? Yeah. There are a few variations in numbers. There are a lot of general items. I see. That's fine. Camilo glanced at Clark-san, and then he nods back and leaves the room. He had gone to do the delivery procedure. Isn't the bandit caught yet? In the middle of the usual small talk, I asked Camilo. It would be a little easier to go home if he had been caught, but judging from the look of the guard, I guess he wasn't caught yet. Yeah. I've been to and from the capital twice since then, but I didn't come across that guy. I asked the count and he said they haven't caught him yet. I see. As expected, there are still risks on the way home. We have to be careful when we go home. Well, that's it. Camilo says while standing up. Follow me for a bit. Oh, okay. We also stand up and we follow Camilo in succession. Didn't you say you wanted a horse before? Camilo says while walking. It seems that our destination is not the warehouse, but I wonder where we are headed. Yeah. Well, you see, I think we'll reach the limit that we can pull with human strength alone. Is it ready? Well, that's where we are headed. As we followed Camilo, I found myself in a garden-like place behind the store. This is a place that is difficult to see from both the front and the warehouse side, and it is probably a place where they usually kept incoming goods temporarily. There is a reason why I said usually. There is something a little unusual there. It's not a horse, but I prepared this one. It's a smrick, Camilo declared proudly. There is a very short and stout lizard-like creature there. The smrick that Camilo referred to. Kurururu. Making such tiny voice, it stared at us with its round and cute eyes. Chapter 133. Smrick. Smrick. I mechanically asked Camilo again. The installed knowledge gave me a general idea of this world's geography and common sense, but it didn't cover the details about the living creatures here. Yeah. It's called smrick. However, it's actually not a dragon, it's more like a lizard. In the previous world, there are also records of calling a huge lizard as dragon. The Komodo lizard was also referred to as Komodo dragon. I guess it's similar in this world too, huh? At first, I thought it was a Zungri Makuri lizard, but the closest one might be a horse-sized brontosaurus. It's more like the rounder and cuter version of the Kaminari dragon listed in the picture books. Or perhaps, it is the cuter version of a western dragon without wings in the previous world. Its scales is beautiful emerald green like the green python or emerald tree boa in the previous world, adding charm to its cuteness. Its eyes are the so-called reptilian eyes, but they are round and adorable. Sure enough, if you think reptiles are cute, they will look pretty cute. It seems that the girls, at least Diana, are not bad with reptiles. My shoulder has been hit continuously since a while ago. Oi, I knew it was cute, but please calm down. What does this guy eat? It feels like it is a herbivore from its appearance. I recall hearing that as carnivores like to eat meat, the muscles in their jaws and necks increase, so their necks don't get that elongated. However, it doesn't necessarily mean that the creatures in this world evolved like those in the previous world. After all, there is such a thing as magic here, and if they evolved in the same way, there would be no elves, beastmen, or dwarves nor a story about dragons themselves. It eats anything. That's what I heard. Well, since it came here, it's been given meat and fodder, and it ate both. I see. It's an omnivore, huh? There is grass around us in the forest and we can procure meat, so I won't have a problem for its feed. Or maybe, like a cat, it's basically carnivorous, but it also eats plants. I've seen videos of cats eating bean sprouts and basil deliciously in the previous world. I guess we'll have to actually feed it and see how much it eats. Right, the amount. Depending on the amount of food it eats, we will have to increase Samir and Diana's hunting time, and I will also need to purchase fodder from Camilo. How big does it eat in one meal? Well, I heard that it doesn't eat that much. But after a while since it came here, it started eating a lot. Is it binge eating due to stress from changes in the environment or something? But then, it would be more normal if it won't eat, and it doesn't make sense that it start eating more after a while. As I was thinking that. Susan, listen. Liddy calls out while pulling the hem of the clothes. What is it? I obediently moved my ears closer to Liddy. Liddy whispers to my ears with a voice that Camilo can't hear. That smrick contains the blood of a dragon. It is a descendant of a decent dragon. So is that why it is omnivorous? And dragons also eat magical power. It will supplement the magical power they lacked with meals, so that's probably why it's like that. After saying that, Liddy moved away from me. I see. There is little magical power in cities and towns. Liddy and the other elves do not settle in cities or town, because they need to take in magical power on a regular basis, and the magical power in such areas is too weak for them to do so. If the magical power is weak, it will eat a lot of food. That may be the reason why I didn't see other smrick in a big place like the capital. And given that case, it is better to keep a horse for towing. Their cost performance is better, so there must be few houses that keeps them. To put it the other way around, in our case, the problem with magical power is solved. It may not need that much food because there is a thick magical power in my house, that even the surrounding beasts do not dare approach it. I'm pretty sure that the place where it was originally kept or captured was a place with a decent amount of magical power. And since it came to a place where the magical power is thin, it probably became lacking in magical power, so it started eating more. In that case, it will not be inconvenient to keep it at home. So, you won't be keeping it? Yeah. With our structure, it's no good if there is only one smrick. Besides, as we always go back and forth over long distances, this smrick is a bit conspicuous. What Camilo is saying is that, with its appearance, it will stand out, and given the perception that it costs a lot of food, whoever owns it means that he has enough money to sustain it. It would be unnatural for a blacksmith to keep one, but as we only go back and forth between the town and my house once every 1 to 2 weeks, we won't be seen that much. Even if someone is interested in looking into it, a blacksmith who has a connection with a merchant and a count who has been rapidly gaining prominence recently, is too suspicious for them to even think of putting their hands on. Okay, then I'll keep it at home. Thanks for your patronage. It's expensive, but it's okay, right? Yeah. Our family has full purse now. There are quite a few gold coins from His Excellency after all. All right, it's sold then. It's fine to give the money next time. Right. You wouldn't mind if I come back 2 weeks later, right? I don't mind. That's for sure, right? Yeah. I'll have the money ready at that time. Understood. I'll tell them to connect your card to it. Thanks. Then Camilo walked towards the warehouse. Chapter 134. A Dragon Cart. Camilo heads to the warehouse and we remained there watching the smrick, the new addition to our family. Can I touch it? Diana asks softly. It's okay as it is now part of our family. When I said so, Diana gently approaches the smrick. The smrick is watching her, but it doesn't show any signs of receding or becoming alarmed. Diana's hand touched the shoulder of the smrick, but it just looked at her. Wow, it's warm. It looks like a reptile, but it is warm, huh? As Diana is stroking its shoulder, the smrick suddenly jerked its neck. I thought it didn't like it, but rather, the smrick gently rubs its head against Diana's shoulder. It looks like it's doing what Diana did in return. As Diana strokes its head, the smrick's eyes squints. Kiruru. It made a sound. When Diana heard that, she was so pleased that the corners of her eyes were lowered. It doesn't seem to dislike being touched by people at all. I don't know if smriks themselves are friendly, or if it's just that this child is especially friendly. Well, it's nice that being touched like this doesn't stress it out. When they realized that it is okay to touch it as Diana did, the other three also went to touch it, albeit timidly. Sure enough, the smrik didn't look uncomfortable. It just rubbed its head against the person touching it and made soft noises. I also stroked its neck. I can feel its warmth when I touch it. It's not like a normal reptile at all. However, it's slippery to touch, almost like a snake. After stroking it for a while, it rubbed its head against mine and made a kurura sound. Eventually, Camilo came back and said that they are ready to tie it to the cart. Well, though I said that, it's only good enough until you guys get home. So make sure you do it properly when you get home. Understood. I also wanted to remodel it into a cart equipped with leaf springs, and it needed to be repaired so it's not inconvenient. I'll give you a harness as a freebie. Thanks, that would help. The clerk at Camilo's store attached a harness, probably for horses, to the smrik to connect it to the cart. Let's remember how to do this. Hodash, it is not that complicated, I see. It may take us a while the first time or two, but we'll get used to it. When I looked at the other four, they are also seriously watching the clerk do it. They then pulled the smrik to the warehouse. They removed the horizontal bar of the handle for human pulling, and they forcibly extended the two bars to connect it with the smrik. I see, this is just an improvised one. Then they took the cart behind the smrik, and they connected it to the smrik's harness. Now we have a simple cart, or a dragon cart I should say. There is no coachman's stand, so the coachman could only sit on a box placed on the cart. Today's coachman is Reich. She's the only one in my family who's ever driven a cart after all. Well, I'm pretty sure this is not included in my cheat category either. I guess we should all practice when we get home. After I received today's sales from Camilo and once we finished loading the goods into the cart, we all climbed inside. As soon as Reich hit the bridle against the smrik's body, it made a coo sound, and it started to walk slowly. It exerted a lot of effort into pulling us at first since it's really heavy. However, as the cart began to move, its steps became lighter and lighter. I then waved goodbye to Camilo from the top of the moving cart. I was usually pulling the cart, so this was a refreshing sight. I'm sure I'll see this scene often from now on, it's quite moving somehow. The dragon cart slowly advances through the town. As expected, it's a rare sight, so we attracted a lot of attention. What's a little interesting is that many of them looked surprised for a moment when they saw the smrik, but then they look convinced after they saw Liddy. Perhaps because they are as rare as the elves, it's not strange for a smrik to pull a cart. Well, it would be better if they were convinced with that and didn't ask any unnecessary questions. Reich speeded up a bit as we stepped out of the town and moved into the main road. The shaking of the cart gets worse accordingly. It's not unbearable, but I still like to install a leaf spring suspension as soon as possible to make the ride more comfortable. It's not a comfortable ride, but as we're traveling along at a comfortable speed, I stop minding about it. It's comfortable. Yeah. We don't have to walk, which makes it easier. Well, apart from the ride quality, that is. Now we just have to see how much this child can carry. Liddy followed up to Diana's words. Well, at least it can afford to carry what two people could, plus us on board. I answered in response. However, I don't know if it can still afford an additional weight or if this is already its limit. I don't want to make it carry the dead weight either. Well, I'll try it somewhere if I have a chance. While we are talking about such things, we arrived at the entrance of the forest. It's almost twice as fast as when Reich and I were pulling the cart. It seems that it will be much faster for us to get home at this rate. With that in mind, the dragon cart went inside the forest. Chapter 135. Start of Environmental Improvement. The dragon cart advances through the forest. I was not too concerned about whether it could pass through here or not. Well, in the first place, we could pass through here normally when it was just a cart. What I'm more worried about is whether the smrik would be afraid of this forest. But so far, there was no sign of that. I knew that it wouldn't be afraid of the magical power here because it eats magical power. However, I thought that it might be frightened by the presence of the beasts living in this forest. Would it be scared if something like a bear approached us? I asked Samia. I don't know much about Smrek, but I think it's highly possible. The bears here are ferocious and strong after all. Izu should know it well because you fought one, right? Well, yeah. It feels nostalgic, but it was a close fight. Without my cheat, I would definitely have died at that time. Then, we need to be careful not to make the Smrek scared. I wonder if that will happen. Well, if that happens, I'll notice it too. Ode Ash, that's right. Among us, Samir has the best sense of smell. Between the Smrek and her, I'm not sure whose nose is better, but it's certain that they'll notice something fatal. So far, they haven't caught anything dangerous. Unless you are a weak guy, where you'll end up becoming the wolf's prey, this forest where there are fewer attacks is safer than in the main road. Now that we've entered the forest, there is no road, so the ground is much worse compared to the main road. However, the cart is moving along at a good speed. Well, the shaking is also terrible. The good thing is that we are moving much faster than when a person is pulling it, so we won't stay like this for a long time. We have to be a little careful with the luggage as well, but so far, they haven't rolled out of the cart. Well, none of them are loaded directly, they are in barrels or boxes. Even so, there are still times when we get a big bump, it is necessary to install suspensions as soon as possible. And yeah, for the sake of our hips and butt as well. Sure enough, we were able to get home much earlier than usual. Apart from the ride quality, it's still a lot easier. I think it should have been introduced earlier, but I'll excuse myself by saying that it's hard to understand something like this until you actually experienced it. While Reich and Liddy removed the Smrek from the cart, the three of us carried the luggage inside the house. I asked them to double-check how to put on the brace when they remove it. In the previous world, I would have been able to take a picture with my phone and record the arrangement, but in this world, I can't do that, so we have to remember it. As we cleaned ourselves, we also wiped the body of the Smrek with a cloth that had been soaked in warm water and wrung out tightly. It seems to be feeling comfortable because it is squinting its eyes while making kururururu sound. Good, thanks for your hard work today. Kururururu. I gave it a light pat on the neck and it licked my face. It was soft and ticklish, not rough like that of a cat. After that, I filled an empty barrel with water and brought it to him. I still have some of yesterday's meat that hasn't been salted yet, so I also brought that to him. If you can eat the grass that grows on the ground here, you can eat them. Just don't go too far. When I said that, the Smrek made a sound, as if it understood me. I stroked its head again and then I went inside the house. At dinner that day, the topic of our conversation is about the name of the Smrek. We can't call it Smrek forever after all. Well, we didn't know if it is a male or female. I forgot to ask Camilo. Besides, I have a feeling that even if I ask him, he would say I don't know. I haven't seen any external features that can be judged like mammals. Given the size of its body, I would have recognized it immediately. In that case, it should be a name that goes either way, huh? Diana had a pensive look. Is there anything like a thumb rule when naming a horse? None. Well, the most amazing horse I've ever heard of, Henning Hermann III, is owned by a nobleman from another country. It seems that he was a descendant of a famous horse. A horse with the name of the house it belongs, plus the third ha. It's not a cheap purchase and I don't know what to feel about it. If I only heard the name, I might ask, is that His Excellency, the Marquis? For a while, we are at loss for what to name it. It often made a kururu sound, so isn't it okay to call it kururu? Samir said so. If it's a male, it would sound a bit cute, but it wouldn't be out of place. Well, the more elaborate the name, the more strange it sounds. That's a good one. I think kururu would suit it. No objection. Diana, Reich and Liddy doesn't seem to have any objections. It's kururu then. In this way, the Smrek was named, and kururu joined the family. Now then, we can't just leave him out in the rain, so we're going to build him a hut with just a roof and walls. Well, it doesn't rain all the time around here, and although it's blocked by trees to some extent, I would feel bad if a family member is exposed to rain. They didn't have any particular objection to my proposal, so from the next day, I decided that we will build a hut for kururu. Only heaven knows when it will rain after all. Everyone decided on kururu's name before going to bed, and when we went to say goodnight, kururu made a coo sound, curled up on the ground and closed its eyes. If it's in the previous world, it's a scene that would definitely manage to be popular in Gram. While taking about 10 combos of Diana's continuous attacks on my shoulders, I went inside the house and prepared for the next day's work. Chapter 136. Dragon Hut Construction. The next day after dawn, when I tried to fetch some water first thing in the morning, Kiruru was already awake. Instead of wandering around, it is sitting still. I guess it is taking some magical power. As I approached, it slowly turned its head towards me. Good morning. Would you like to go fetch water with me? Coo. Kiruru stands up slowly. Oh, wait a minute dash. I hurried back inside the house and brought another water jug to be tied on Kiruru's neck. Is it tight? Coo dash. All right, then come along. After saying that, I took the lead and it slowly followed me. I don't know if a smrick needs a walk or not, but since we won't be going to the town for the next 2 weeks, it might be better to give it some exercise like this every day. For the time being, we'll have a round trip today and see how it goes. I proceeded at the same pace as usual, and then we eventually arrived at the lake. I decided to finish washing my face here. After all, it's really narrow when 5 people line up in a tub. Subsequently, I also wiped Kiruru's body. Then I check the area around its eyes and nose to see if, in human terms, it has eye or nose mucus. There was none and it seems to be healthy. Speaking of which, what should we do if the smrick catches a cold? I wonder if there is a doctor specializing on them too. It would be hard to call a doctor to a remote place like this. I guess we should think about what to do when humans, including beastmen, dwarf and elf, get sick. When I and Kiruru are refreshed, I filled the jug with water. For the time being, the amount of water I put on the water jug to be carried by Kiruru is only about half. Is it heavy? Kiruru. All right, you carry that much for today. Let's go home. As we returned home, I kept my eyes on Kiruru. However, it didn't seem to stagger or stop. Let's make it carry a little more tomorrow then. Thank you for your hard work. Let's go there again tomorrow. Coo. I loosened the water jug tied around Kiruru's neck. Kiruru seemed to be happy when it heard that we were going there again tomorrow. I think it would be good to take it with me every day. After I took the water jug, Kiruru took a small bite on the leftover meat from yesterday. Looking at it, it seems that it only ate a bit last night. If it only eats that much per meal, it will have enough to eat until tomorrow. At this rate, it will probably eat less than a human. It will be an awesome eco-friendly creature. I then told Kiruru that I'll see him later and then I went back inside. After breakfast and some other things, we start today's work. I hope to have Kiruru's hut built within a week at the latest. It's literally just a shack, so I'm sure it will be built soon. We dig a hole to build a pillar facing the courtyard. The tool we used is a custom-made shovel. The soil here is also hard, but thanks to the custom-made model and our strengthened muscles, the hole was dug quickly. The size of the hut was decided by asking Kiruru to come to the site. The size of the hut was set so that there would be enough room for Kiruru to lie and roll around, so it is quite spacious. In the hole that we dug, we pulled out a tree and put it in as a pillar. Kiruru helped me to hang and pull up the rope, so I made a lot of progress. No matter how strong my muscles are, I'm still no match for an expert like a smrick after all. After the pillars have been erected, it's time to lay the beams. The beam is not a magnificent one, but it is intended to maintain the structure of the building at a minimum. I utilized my cheat to make good meshes, and I used the nails I made before to fix them up so they don't fall off. When I assembled the roof purlins and so on, I could see the outer shape of the hut. After that, we will put roof boards and wall boards here, but before that, we layered the soil that came out when we dug a hole in the floor of the hut to make it a little higher than the surrounding ground. If we don't do this, water will flow in when it rains, which will be a problem for Kiruru. As for the work itself, I left it to Samir and the others who already had experience in building rooms, and Kiruru was also here to help us carry it. Liddy, though not used to it, helped us a lot, so it went quite smoothly. Even so, it would have been impossible to build it at such a pace, so that's where my cheat comes in. At this point, it was now getting late, so we would have to wait until tomorrow to put up the boards. I declared that this day's work is over to everyone. After the work, I cleaned up myself and asked Liddy about it. Kiruru seems to be eating much less food. Is it still because of that? That's right. The magical power of this forest is greater than others, so I think that's almost enough. I see. Whether it is domesticated or wild, it is extremely intelligent. I'm not sure if it understands every detail, but it at least understands what I'm saying. In addition to its rarity, I think that is a big part of the reason given the fact that it is expensive. Well, even if we leave that out of the equation, the fact is that it looks really quite cute. I feel like I'm building a new family room rather than a shed for the livestock, although it is far from a shack. I hope to complete it by tomorrow. With that in mind, I started to prepare dinner. Chapter 137. Completion of Dragon Hut. The next day. When I get up, I also took Kururu with me today when I went to fetch water. This time I had Kururu carry a water jug filled about 3/4 of water, which is more than what he carried yesterday. However, I think he can afford more. In that case, it will be fine to make it carry a water jug filled with water. Today's work basically consisted of putting up the boards. We started with cutting out the boards according to size. Samir and I will do this at the lumberyard. After the boards are cut, the other three and Kururu will carry them to the hut. When Kururu carries the boards, it holds them in its mouth and carries them with great dexterity, but in the beginning, Diana was very nervous for it. She is like a mother watching over her child. I don't know how to feel about that, but I think Kururu will be fine without us worrying too much about him. Since I'm using a custom model saw made with the help of my cheat, I was able to mass produce the boards in no time. We are a little low on wood, but I have a way to get some. Also, until now, I didn't go too far to cut wood, but now, I can do that with Kururu as the transporter. And at some point, it's a good idea to secure a large amount of them. I will make a wall from the board I made. Well, if I were to do something elaborate, it would be better to dig a groove in the pillar and fit the board there. However, I'm in a hurry this time, so I'm just hammering the boards into the pillars. The wall would not be completely covered though. The upper part would be open. The eaves on the roof should be covered so that the rain should not blow in directly. The roof itself will have a shingle roofing, but we can only check for leaks when it rains. Since the edges of the shingles will be covered, there should not be much leakage. In terms of image, it is similar to the shrine buildings using thick roof shingles that existed in Japan. Of course, I can't do something as laborious as that, but if I do it the same way, the effect will be similar. We made it in a hurry, but with the combination of the help of the cheat and effective division of labor, we managed to form a shape before the sun went down. As for the fences and doors, well, we thought about the possibility of unidentified bandit coming to the area, but we all know that if they were to be a human, or a beastman, dwarf, an elf or lizardman, there would be no point in making fences and doors. Besides, Kururu is smart enough so everyone agreed that it wouldn't be necessary to make them separately. It's not like the previous world where it's illegal if the pets are not leashed, so it is completely free to roam around as it please. Well, it now has the appearance of a hut, but after all there is the feeling that it is just put that way. When I have enough time, I'd like to renovate this place into a storage room and build a proper livestock barn, dragon house. Separately. Kururu, this is your room from today. I spoke to it while patting its neck. Kururu. Kururu roamed around when it got inside. Coo. After making a sound, it lay down. It seems that it likes it. It's good if it liked it. It was worth the hurry to make it. When you go to bed or when it's raining, go here. If anything happens, just hit the wall of the house. Diana added while stroking Kururu. I wonder if Kururu understands what she was saying. Kururu. It replied. Since I was away from Diana this time, I would like to happily express that my shoulders were safe. At dinner, we discussed and decided on our future plans. The next visit to Camilo's store is in 12 days, so we have a few days to spare. However, there are still a lot of things we need to do now. For the time being, I'll be working on the urgent task of remodeling the cart over the next 4 days, while Reich and the others will be doing their normal work. Making sheet metal, making general model items, hunting and gathering, and field maintenance. As soon as I'm done with the cart, I'll go back to my normal blacksmithing work. Once I've made enough, I'll spend the rest of my time making the doors and beds for the room that will belong to Liddy. If I didn't make it in time, I would have to make them at the beginning of the next 2 weeks. Well, I don't think there will be any inconvenience since she is currently occupying the guest room. But as a family, I felt uncomfortable to let her continually stay in the guest room, so I would like to work on it as soon as possible. The next day, I once again went to fetch water with Kururu. When I got out of the house today, it was already waiting there, so I handed him a water jug. It's only been about 3 days since it came here, but it seems that it has become a routine for Kururu. Today, I filled the water jug with water and gave it to Kururu. He carried it without any problems. Well, it was able to pull a heavy cart, so I guess it can handle this much. Thanks again for today, Kururu. Kururu and I walked back to the house together. Chapter 138. New Technology. From today, I will start remodeling the cart as planned. The current cart has a single axle at the front and rear with wooden wheels at both ends. The simplest method is to insert a spring between the axle and the body of the cart, but considering turning, it would be better to extend an arm from the axle and attach the wheel to it. In this case, the spring would be mounted around the wheel. Unlike automobiles, the wheels themselves do not have to change direction, and there is no need to consider transmitting power to either the front or rear wheels. It is helpful that the design around that area is easy. After that, it is necessary to remake the connection part that has been forcibly extended. Then as for the cart, the loading platform and wheels will be reused, and the remaining parts will need to be repaired in some places. Given that, it is not clear whether rebuilding the whole cart would be faster. The next thing to consider is the material for the leaf spring. Generally speaking, it would be better to use steel, but the wood around here is pretty hard, and I do think that it is not impossible to use wood for the leaf spring. With the help of my cheat, it would be easy to make a shape that can be used as a leaf spring. However, the question is whether metal leaf springs can be released to this world. After thinking about it for a while, I realized that it would be the same. If someone saw it made of wood, he could replace it with steel, so I decided to make it out of steel. However, I decided to make the shape prototype using wood. No matter how much cheats I have, it takes a certain amount of time to adjust the size. With wood, it would be easier to change its shape with my knife. Reich and the others should be making sheet metal from today, so I asked them to make more. I wonder if I should actually make it myself though. When I uttered that, "No, it's originally my job as an apprentice to do this kind of work, most especially if boss tells me to," Reich answered. Sorry for that. We made a lot of boards when we built Kururu's hut, so I took the rest, and then I cut and divide them into long and narrow parts. I made planks of different lengths. I then boiled water to bend it and stack them on top of each other. The principle is almost the same as the one used for leaf spring suspension. Since this is a prototype, I nailed it around the center and fix it to a board instead of a stand to prevent it from falling. After that, I placed another board on top of the leaf spring, and then I placed a small barrel on top of it. I gently supported the board with one hand, and then I pushed the barrel from above with my other hand. When I released it, the barrel bounced back. This is good given the shape of the leaf spring itself. This series of operations can be treated as production, and I was able to do it quickly. I wonder to what extent the cheat is applied as a production. Cooking seems to be included in production, and maybe sewing is also included. I tried doing laundry, but there was not much difference compared to what the others did, so it seems that it is not production. Even if this work is the priority for now, it would be better to know what can be done and to what extent. Anyway, let's go back to the improvement of the cart. I made another set of leaf springs, cut down a log to make 4 wheels, and I made 2 axles by picking up appropriate sticks and processed them. The front and rear wheels were made by fixing simple wheels to both ends of the axles. For the front and rear wheels, a board was placed in the front and rear directions on each side, and then an axle was fixed to the board so that it could rotate. For the rear wheels, a leaf spring is inserted between the plate and the axle, and the height of the front wheel side is a bit higher. The details of these operations are mostly done with my cheat. I would like to be able to do this with my own abilities, but I wonder if I will be able to distinguish it the way I am able to do it with my cheat. Right now, it can be said that it is the element of the cheat that I can do this much work, but when I became accustomed to this ability in the next 10 to 20 years, is it really a cheat or my own ability? But I can't help but think a lot when I'm working alone. Let's take a break. Right then, I realized that Kururu was sitting beside me watching me do my work. Well, it can't be helped as it doesn't have any work to do other than fetching water. You are here, Kururu, huh? Kuru. Then, can you help me a little? As I placed another board on top of the board passed between the axles, it looked like a freight train dolly. It's probably not durable, but it could be used for simple tasks. I tied a rope to the dolly-like thing, and I placed the empty barrel I used earlier on the board. The rope is tied to Kururu's body so Kururu could pull it. Does it tighten or hurt? Kururu. Okay, then go around the garden. Kururu goes around the garden as I told it to. Since the structure is make-up, turning is inevitably forced. The empty barrel bounced once, and then it rolls over and falls as it did when it first turned. Seeing that, Kururu tried to stop. You can continue walking as it is. After I said that, it started going around the garden again. It is difficult to check because the weight on the leaf spring is extremely light, but when comparing the front and rear wheels, it seems that the rear wheels are moving with suspension. I guess that's it for the rear wheels for the time being. I thought to myself, then I happily watched Kururu go around the garden for a while. Chapter 139. Step by step. After that, I tried the structure of the rear wheel part and created the shape that would be the best when I replaced it with metal. The rest would be to apply this structure to an actual cart. The work itself will be after the front wheel parts can be prototyped tomorrow. Well, it's kind of dark already, and Reich and the others have ended their work today as well. Speaking of Kururu, it seems like it was playing all day today. I hope it was having fun. I'll ask its help again tomorrow. The next day, I removed the front wheel of the prototype dolly that I assembled yesterday. With reference to the rear wheel part that I made yesterday, I made 2 more of the same set of leaf spring. Simply put, if the left and right front wheels can be made independent, and this leaf spring can be sandwiched between them, the basic structure of Aizu Workshop's special cart will be completed. However, it is easier said than done, and it will take a lot of effort to realize that. Even I, with my knowledge of the previous world and a vague idea of what the finished product would look like, would have a hard time with this. Sure enough, the people in the previous world who created it with their own hands are truly amazing. I've tried various ways to make it, and it seems that the best way to make it is to have the wheels attached to the tips of the legs, which are structured like a grave. I placed the upper part in front of the dolly so that the protruding legs can move independently on the left and right, and then I installed leaf springs on the extended legs. Lastly, I attached a wheel made from a log to the end of the foot, and there, it's done. Kururu came to see the work as well, or rather, the person himself, Dragon itself, came to play. So, after asking Kururu to pull it like yesterday, I had him go around the garden. Kururu walks in the garden in a good mood. It seems to be much easier to turn compared to yesterday. Looks like even a little unevenness can be absorbed to some extent. Since yesterday's barrel was too light making it fell quickly, today, I put a small barrel filled with water on it. It weighs about 10 kilograms. The dolly sinks slightly. Okay, please go round again with this. Kururu begins to go around the garden. Perhaps because of its weight, the barrel does not fall immediately even when the dolly turns. It sways softly around what seems to be the uneven part. Water is spilling due to the shaking, but there is no sense of a bump impact. If the same thing were applied on the wagon, it might protect Miss Frederica's butt a little. Looking at it, I'm worried about the load. Well, utilizing my cheat, I'll use steel with custom model performance when I mount it on the cart, so I'm sure it can handle it. It will somehow be a bit forced though. I feel bad to those who will imitate the use of leaf springs, but I'd like to leave it to them to improve the suspension system and other aspects of the system on their own. In the previous world, it seems that there were occasional things like, it cannot be reproduced with modern technology. There were also stuff like, even if I make the same thing, it doesn't have the same durability. I guess it will be the same as that. The day ended with the completion of this part. Tomorrow I have to start on the cart itself. The next day, I combined the surplus boards and installed it on the dolly as a loading platform, so that it could be used as a small cart. It's all made of wood, and I used my cheat to cut it into a circle as much as possible, but since the wheels are still cut from logs, I think that there are many difficulties in durability and usability, but I can use it for a while, or make Kururu play with it. If it breaks, so be it. Finally, it's now time to modify the cart itself. First, I removed the wheels and repaired the damaged parts of the cart. I'm also going to fix the parts that I think could still use a little more work. Thanks to the cheat, I was able to repair the damage by sticking the boards together without nails. The color is different in some places, but I guess it's somewhat like a style. I made parts from wood to replace the damaged parts of the wheel. From this point on, it will be blacksmithing work, so I entered the workshop. Reich and the others were making short swords and long swords. Diana and Liddy were making the molds, Samia was pouring the molten iron, and Reich is doing the finishing. Because of this, there were a good number of them made by the time I entered. I picked up one of the finished product. It's still in the category of general model, but it's almost a high-end model. There are some magical power contained in it. Reich is definitely leveling up. This is well made. No, I'm still a long way off. I need to be able to consistently produce the high-end model, as boss said before. It's good to have high goals. It's a no-brainer to say this and that, so I just said, do your best, and then I proceed with my own work. The first thing to do is to make iron plates for the leaf springs. I take out some sheet metal and heat one of them on the firebed and hammer it. That sensation and sound that I haven't felt in a long while reverberated in my body, and I kinda felt nostalgic. The sensation made me think that I had become a blacksmith in body and mind in less than a year since I came here. Chapter 140. Parts Production. While enjoying the nostalgic feeling, I stretched the sheet metal into an elongated plate. The length and thickness are measured with my cheat. Its hardness is of a custom model one. Since the steel is simply stretched, the first piece is made quickly. About 7 different lengths are needed for each leaf spring, so I prepared to stretch them in the same way. Only the longest one has both ends rounded. I shaped it like a small cylinder. When making a knife, I would probably form its shape as it is. But today, in a state before it was turned into a knife, I did some quenching on it. Speaking of which, even in the previous world, the leaf springs of trucks can be carved out and make them into knives. On the contrary, I am now making leaf springs from the materials used on knives. Thinking of it, it's kind of interesting. Since stretching a sheet metal is just a small work, I was able to finish the work in a blink of an eye. However, it will take some time to make a prototype of the front wheel part, so this is it for today. The detailed parts and assembly will be done tomorrow. The next morning, I decided to use the mini cart prototype model when fetching water. I covered the water jug with a lid and secured it to the mini cart with a rope. This is also a simple reproduction of how carts are used when transporting goods. We experimented on it yesterday, so I'm sure there's nothing wrong with it. Kururu was waiting just outside the house this morning as well. I tied a rope to Kururu for him to pull the mini cart around. This is for today. I'll be counting on you. Kururu. Kururu pulls the mini cart with a rattle and starts walking with me. It's an empty water jug, but it's heavier compared to an empty barrel. It's quite stable and it doesn't become wobbly except for the occasional rattling. Kururu doesn't seem to have any difficulty in pulling it, so I can say that there is no problem for the time being. The real part begins when I filled the water jug with water. When we arrived at the lake, I filled the water jugs. When I put it on the mini cart, it sinks a lot. It's quite heavy. I put the lid on the water jug and tied a rope around the neck to secure it to the cart. That should do it. In conclusion, the mini cart itself was a success. Since it is covered and fixed with a rope, water does not leak, and it is a given that it will not fall, but there is still a little shaking. If this is the case, the same effect can be expected even if it is attached to the cart. Well, the only failure was that Kururu seemed to look a little bored. Apparently, when fetching water in the morning, it wants to carry it by itself, not with a cart. With a wry smile, I promised Kururu to let him carry it from tomorrow. After finishing all my morning routines, I proceed with my work. My work for today is to make parts. Today as well, Reich and the others are dividing up the work on making short swords and long swords. The parts I will make today are the ones that will hold the springs together, the ones that will secure the springs to the cart, the wheels, axles and thin plates that will reinforce the cart in places. Using the mini cart as a reference, I used my cheat to make the size of the parts to be attached to the actual cart. If I didn't have this cheat, I would have had to measure the dimensions and make it from there. I think it would have been something like that normally, but well, that's the cheat for me. The parts that fix the spring to the cart may have a rather complicated shape, but I can create the correct shape with the correct dimensions in one shot. I might be able to make an early car if I knew how it worked. Well, I don't have intention of making such a thing at the moment though. I want to make only good things that fit this world as much as possible. Next to the assembly line work, with rattling noises, I create a one-off part. The reverse section looks a bit weird. When I completed the set of parts, I did a heave-ho, and then I headed for the cart. Chapter 141. Renovation completed. I took the parts to the place where I disassembled the cart. Now I am going to assemble these parts. There are parts that are different from the previous world, so it is necessary to arrange them. For example, instead of using nuts or bolts, it will be supplemented with pins or wedges. Of course, it has impact on the maintainability and durability. Well, I will cover that by using parts made with my cheat and daily inspections. However, I would like to ask those who will replicate this to improve it on their own. First, let's assemble from the rear wheel. I attached a set of leaf springs and a part for connecting the back of the cargo bed, and then I connected the tubular part of the longest leaf spring there. Since the leaf spring is bow-shaped, the length of the string part of the bow changes when it is stretched and when it is retracted. It is necessary to have a part that absorbs this change when it is connected. This is attached to one side only, the other side is directly connected to the cargo bed. Once the leaf springs have been put together with the parts that binds the leaf spring set, I pass the axle through the cylinder at the bottom of the part, and then I attach the wheels on both sides to complete the structure. For the lubricating oil, lard will be used. Even in the previous world, pork fat was used before mineral oil became common. In my case, I will be using boar fat. Aside from that, it seems that rapeseed oil can also be used, but we have plenty of boar fat, so that will be used for now. I temporarily assembled the front wheel. The parts for mounting the wheel were made of wood, and test pulling it. Kiruru, who had come before I knew it, is already waiting for me with an excited snort. Since I am not going to ask him to pull it for a long distance, I used a rope instead of putting a brace on him. Does it hurt? Kiruru. When I checked to see if there was any problem, it seemed to be okay, so I asked Kiruru to go around the garden like that. The mechanism itself is working well, but there are some strange parts, so I repeat the process of removing it, adjusting it, and have Kiruru pull it again. The adjustment was finally completed when the sun went down. For the time being, this completes the rear wheels. The connection between the front wheels and the brace will be done tomorrow. The next morning. For today's fetching of water, I made Kiruru carry it himself. Kiruru is greatly satisfied. Come to think of it, why do Smoke want to pull or carry things? Since they are smart enough, I think there might be something other than biological instincts, but unfortunately, I don't have any cheat in biology, and I don't have any knowledge in that area in my installed knowledge either, so I don't have any idea about them at all. For now, since Kiruru is in a good mood, let's let him be. The front wheel part has a slightly different mechanism, but the work is the same. Instead of screws and bolts, pins are used to assemble and adjust the parts. Since the left and right front wheels are independent, the parts that need durability are made of steel. Well, even with this, there are still some concerns. So the steel is made with as much magical power as a custom model. It was quite a feat of strength. The final adjustment will be made after modifying the connection part with the brace. From the shape of the removed connecting part, I'll be making a new connection part. This part is made with wood and the reused existing parts. After making the new part, I put the brace on Kiruru. It took a long time because I was not used to it, and then I adjusted the connection part and the cart. If Kiruru moves a little, I make adjustments, a little movement, and I make minute adjustments. Then finally, Kiruru is ready to pull it smoothly. The next time I do some repair work, I'd like to make it smoother. Now that I made the final adjustments for the whole thing, I asked Kiruru to pull the cart again. Suspension seems to work on both front and rear wheels. However, there seems to be some problems, so I stopped Kiruru, and then I did the adjustment again. By the time I was satisfied, the sun was already setting. If it's just blacksmithing, it won't take that long. Well, my general production cheats aren't as capable as my blacksmithing cheat. There is no choice but to repeat trial and error in this way. Anyway, this should make the ride much better, and our speed can be increased accordingly. If it doesn't take long to get to the town, there will be more things we can do with that time. I started cleaning up while I happily visualized what we could do in that time. Chapter 142. A new usual. The cart was completed yesterday. Reich and Liddy had been working on the general model knife and training with magic, while Samir and Diana had been out hunting. In other words, today was the day to collect their game. The 5 of us have experienced collecting the game before, and Kiruru will be joining us today. It was quite a challenge even with 5 people when the game was a big one. I think it will be much easier if Kiruru joins. We won't be using the cart or mini cart this time as well. This is because the carrier that is made over there will be taken apart and dried at home, and then we turn it into lumber like that. The location where the game is submerged in the lake is different each time. It is near the place where we did some fishing before. Therefore, a little bit of logging should not be a problem. I think. We're cutting down some trees somewhere once a week. We'll need to consider about this sooner or later, I guess. All of us head to the place where it was sunk. The process is still the same. We will pull it up and make a carrier to put it on. But from now on, Kiruru will be the one to pull the carrier. We thought about asking Kiruru to help us pull it up, but we decided that it would be better to do it ourselves. It may seem overprotective, but even if I am to think about it indifferently, it is not a good way to use the smrick, which is not cheap. Despite my somewhat bad intention, in reality, Kiruru is happily towing the carrier. I guess we can bring him along again in the future. Thanks to Kiruru, we were able to get home earlier than usual. Thank you, Kiruru. Diana strokes Kiruru's nape while thanking him. Everyone else did the same. Of course, I did too. Kiruru. Kiruru's eyes squinted in happiness. It's time to dismantle the game. It's a wild boar this time. From today on, a portion of it will be used as Kiruru's meal, so I'll set aside some of it for him. Since Kiruru hardly eats anything, I kept his portion for today, and the portion for drying Kiruru's portion will be dried raw. With this we have enough food for Kiruru for the next 2 weeks. Kiruru also eats grass when he feels like it. I checked with Liddy if there were any poisonous plants around here, and she said that there were none, unless they mutate. So I didn't stop him or make any special preparations for it. Kiruru's staple food is the magic of the forest, so I decided not to think about other nutrients. It doesn't seem to be a creature that can be matched with the knowledge in the previous world after all. Well, it's cute, so it's fine. Since it is the day when the game is pulled up, today's lunch will be a dish using that meat. Pork steak is fine, but for today I'm going to make it like yakiniku. Eventually, I'd like to try to make a cutlet or schnitzel with bread made from fermented seeds, or a dish that is not completely fried. After lunch, I'll work on making the high-end model ones. From today I need to rush to make enough inventory for 2 weeks. Everyone else have a free time, but Reich will be observing me work and train as well. Samir and Diana are supposed to help Liddy to improve the fields in the courtyard. Well, it's half work, I guess. I'll make short swords and long swords today. They've left me a few things that are just out of the molds, so I'm going to work on them. When these are gone, I'll make knives. While I'm working on the short sword and long sword, Diana came inside the workshop from the house. It feels like her expression is different from usual. I thought she was working in the field. Kiruru is in front of the much smaller cart. Ode Ash, that her. If you hang the attached rope around its shoulder, it'll be happy to pull it. Oh, okay. I understand. Diana jumped out at a speed that would be best fit the word shoot off. I guess she felt that Kiruru wanted to play with it. It seems that Kiruru is aware that fetching water in the morning is his daily work, and that mini cart and the carrier we made when we took the game can be his playthings. How about a big cart? I hope Kiruru think it's an important job because we put a brace on him and travel a long distance. Perhaps because of the abundant magical power of the Black Forest, it has a surplus of energy. I soon heard him made a Kiruru sound, and then the rattling sound of the cart echoed outside. As I listened to the sounds, I was happy to know that one more item had been added to the usual list. Chapter 143. Story of a Legendary Blacksmith. The number of productions on that day was the same as usual, not particularly high or low. Should I take this because there was a blank, or is it regardless of the blank? Well, either way, it's a good thing that it was not less than planned. The next day, Reich and I went to work at the smithy, while the other 3 and Kiruru went to do some collecting. It appears that Liddy is also committed on looking for something to plant in the field, and Kiruru seemed to have pulled the mini cart with him. The mini cart is not very much useful given the quantity they would gather, though. I think Kiruru simply took it with him like when he's out for a walk. For the first time in a while, today I will be making a longsword starting from making its mold. I miss this feeling somehow. I poured the molten iron into the mold. I slowly and carefully poured it in while utilizing my cheat. While it is hardening, I proceed to make the next mold. At first, Reich said she would do it, but I refused because she has her own work to do. Although she is my apprentice, I didn't really teach her anything in particular. I did ask her to make a lot of sheet metal, but it is against my aesthetics to ask her to do this and that as my apprentice, especially when I haven't taught her anything. That's why I alone have been kneading clay and pasting it onto the male mold to make a mold. In fact, this is the second generation of the male mold. Well, the design is the same as before, so there is not that much difference though. When the iron has cooled down, I then took it out of the mold. The quality is better when I poured it myself. The amount of magic power is also much different than when Samir and Diana did it. Is this also thanks to the cheat? Speaking of this long sword, or even with short sword, it seems that when I pour and process it myself, the production speed itself is the fastest. But of course, I'm just one. I can't do the work of making molds or pouring molten iron while I'm processing. So in terms of efficiency, it's faster to have Samir and the others help me. If I did it all by myself, it will be meaningless. To put it the other way around, when it comes to making custom-made models, I'm currently the fastest person to do it from scratch. It's a field where I'm good enough to do it all by myself. I then showed it to Reich. With this output, even if you say that you haven't finished it yet, I really don't know where to touch it. She told me that. This may be the case with Reich, who has just touched the beginning of a high-end model. Even so, her work is better than most of the average human blacksmiths. Speaking of which, what is the general level of dwarves? In the case of a human blacksmith, even with my high-end model, it was said that there are several people at the same level in the capital. In other words, I think the general model ones is on an average level or maybe higher. When I asked about it, Reich replied, "That's right. If we are talking about the weapons at a dwarven blacksmith workshop, it seems that the number of items that have reached the level made by boss is 10 times higher than that in the capital. That's rather a lot. In the case of us dwarves, we focus more on drawing out the power of the material than on the magical power. That's why we are not that good at processing mithril. Well, we are better at working with silver and gold though. The characteristics of mithril change depending on the amount of magical power applied on it. However, if you do not handle it well, it will result to something like a light steel. It's still good enough though. Still, we are generally better than humans. To find out what we are good at, we went on a journey of apprenticeship with humans as well, you see. I see. However, there are only a few dwarves who can make something that have both the performance and craftsmanship like bosses. In the case of your custom-made model, I'm not sure if the legendary Don Dorgo can compete against it. Is he a great blacksmith? Legend has it that during the Great War 600 years ago, he received power from the gods, and he forged a sword for the hero. It was in the installed knowledge that there was a war between demons and humans and other races 600 years ago. At that time, the hero defeated the demon king. But when the humans were cornered as the other races pushed back, the hero fell. As both sides were exhausted, there was a truce. It seems that it ended to a pragmatic line talk. Anyways, according to Reich's story, it was the dwarf, Don Dorgo, who forged the hero's sword when he defeated the demon king. I wonder if I'm that amazing that I'm comparable to such a legend though. That's true. After all, your knives can cut that much. Oh. I have no choice but to be convinced there. If I'm to say that I'm not that amazing, we'll come to talk about what I'm amazing at. However, it seems that the sword of the hero that was forged by Don Dorgo was a substitute for a sword that was 2 meters long and 60 centimeters wide. I heard that it was made of an orichalcum or some kind of a divine mineral. That indeed sounds like it could cut anything. After all, to be able to forge it, I could see that he is amazing. I smiled bitterly. At that size, it's no different from swinging a steel frame, orichalcum bone. From the feel of mithril, it would have taken a lot of effort to process the orichalcum. And even though they probably had the backing of a nation, it's still amazing that they were able to secure such amount in the first place. The weapon itself is made of orichalcum, and though he can do it, it is certain that there aren't many who can. As for the hero, he is either a very macho man or, since it's a legend, it may be a little exaggerated. Yes. But if it's boss, I'm sure you make smaller weapons with same sharpness, moreover it can be made with such refined workmanship, right? I'm not sure. I won't know unless I try. It happened 600 years ago, so it's impossible to confirm. However, depending on Don Dorgo's level of handling magical power, even if I made a similar item, the performance should be better because I'm good at handling magical power. However, it should be considered that his level of handling magical power has improved to some extent because of the power given by God, and whether if I'm as good as he is a question. Since I got my second life as a blacksmith, I'm not without the desire to leave a product or work that will have a good reputation, but on the other hand, I also have a strong desire to live a quiet and laid-back life. When it came to that, when I get older, I wonder if it's better to release a tremendous thing to the world saying, "This is my work," and then live a secluded life after that. And that my last sword before abandoning the world is a masterpiece. Even I'm past 40, it's a matter that make my puny heart throb. Legendary ha. I thought I said it in a rather quiet voice, but yes. I think boss will probably become someone like that. Reich replied. I quickly went back to work to hide my embarrassment. Chapter 144. A day passing slowly. I was able to make long swords and short swords rather well. From the sales I heard from Camilo, we still need more of these for the high-end models, so if we can make them for a few more days, we should be fine. As for the amount of knives, it should be fine in moderation. It looks like I'll have time to make the door and the bed for Liddy's room. Shortly before the sun went down, I heard a rattling noise from the outside. Kururu should have returned. That means the other three were back as well. As expected, Samia, Diana, and Liddy returned to the workshop shortly after. Welcome home. When I greeted them, the three of them replied with, I'm home. What did you get today? It's mainly fruits. There are also some that are likely to be planted in the fields. It was Liddy who chose it. We focus on things that can be harvested early. Samia replied and Liddy followed up. If she means early crops, then it has to be some herbs and leafy greens. Let's soak some of the fruits in wine and consume the rest as soon as possible. It's good to have a table full. After ending the day's work, I prepared our dinner. Today I made something like a roasted wild boar meat with herbs. I also served some apple-like fruits. I cut up some of the apple-like fruits and put them in a small jar with plenty of water. The jar was sterilized by boiling, and the water was boiled once. After sealing its lid, I left them in the workshop. I hope it works. The dinner was well received. The cooking method itself is difficult to elaborate, but I want to change the seasoning as much as possible. I should ask Camilo if I can get butter or cheese. The next day. Samia, Diana, and Liddy are working in the fields today. This is because the seedlings brought back yesterday must be replanted early. Of course, the amount of seedlings they brought back is not enough to fill the field. We need to make room for the seeds when they arrive from Elf Village, so we purposely left some space for that. Since it is a family of 5 people plus 1 pet, even if we could harvest the maximum amount of food per person, the quantity would be limited. However, I think that whether or not we can be self-sufficient is important in this kind of lifestyle. I don't know what might force us to stay here for a long time, and it would be essential if we started a life like a retreat. It would be good to accumulate such know-how now. But for now, I have to be a blacksmith. It is also necessary to make a reasonable amount of inventory by the time of delivery about a week later. Well, isn't it better to go see it in between? It seems that Samir and the others will help with the blacksmithing work from tomorrow, so I switched to making knives today. In terms of manufacturing speed, it's faster to get their help when making a sword. Reich will also be making knives today. According to Camilo, the general model knives made by Reich are the best-selling knives, so it is better to have the same number of general model knives. In other words, there are not that many high-end knives available. This is because the number of people who want knives with such sharpness is much smaller than the other products. Camilo also said that it doesn't have a problem if it's lesser. So today, I'll split the workload between the general model and the high-end model ones. Today I'd also like to reduce Reich's load with the general model by half. She can then spend that time making what she wants. When I told Reich about it, at first she said, "That's discourteous," but I convinced her that she should be able to make something on her own as a disciple of Aizu workshop, so she reluctantly accepted. I feel that I'm pushing my disciple around a bit, but please forgive me for being selfish sometimes. For the general model, I don't have to put so much effort into it, so I can do it easily. For a while, the sound of me and Reich hammering rhythmically echoed in the workshop, then we heard a rattling sound from outside. I guess Kururu begged Diana to let him pull the mini cart. If I could make a plow for Kururu to pull, it would be easier to expand the farm, but I don't intend to do such a large-scale farming. With the addition of a rattling bass sound to the clear rhythm of the metals hitting with each other, Reich and I mass-produced knives. Chapter 145. Last room. I took a look at the field during a break in making knives. Ridges have been made and the sprouts of the seedlings are neatly lined up, forming a pretty line. The spacing between the seedlings seems to have been kept wide. I wonder if this wild species has a wide root system. It seems that not all of the seedlings have been planted yet, but the work is progressing well. Oh, are you done? Well, it's almost done, Diana said proudly. She was holding a hoe in her hand, and with her appearance, no one would believe it, even if they were told that she is the daughter of Count. Well, this could only mean that she has become so accustomed to the life here. The soil around here has a lot of magic power, so I think it will grow well. The one who said that is Liddy. She is also holding a hoe. As a former resident of another world, I find the idea of an elf with a hoe a bit strange. I mean, it just doesn't look right. Well, maybe it's just because Reich's looks good with an axe that it makes me think like that. Before they started this work, I asked Liddy about it, and she told me that it was normal to work in the fields in her village, so I guess this is usual for her. I've never done this kind of work, it's quite a hard work. With a hoe on her hand, Samir also followed up. Well, I've heard that the beastmen on the Black Forest basically don't do any farming. Beastmen are very strong, so I'm sure you'll get used to it. It'll be good practice for your swordmanship. Liddy and Diana told her that. They've gotten along well over the past few days, which is a good development. It's a lot of trouble if there's something that doesn't suit someone. All right then, I'm going back to the workshop. Okay, do your best. See you later. After receiving cheers from Samir and Diana and a nod from Liddy, I headed back to the workshop. As I was about to return, Kururu, who noticed that I was out of the house, approached me, so I stroked his nape and watched around the garden for a while. I think Kururu's also getting better at balancing the load as he pulls it. The day before yesterday, the mini cart was shaking a bit more, but today it seems to be shaking a little less. I guess he was not only playing, but also practicing. Good, you're doing great, Kururu. I stroked Kururu, who was rubbing its head on me. This time, I really went back to the workshop. I felt a great tug at such parting though. After that, I was able to finish the blacksmithing work on this day without any trouble. Work from the next day proceeded in the same way as before. I made a sword for about 2 days and then a knife for the next 2 days. Reich basically makes the same thing as me, and under the guidance of Liddy, she practices on how to put in some magical power. Samir, Diana and Liddy routinely goes hunting, collecting, and watching the fields. As for Kururu, he was also busy pulling things and collecting the prey and playing around the yard. In between these activities, I checked on the apples in the water. So far, it's looking good. They should be just fine by the time I come back from Camilo's store the day after tomorrow. The day before going to Camilo's store for wholesale, I made the door and bed that will belong to Liddy's room. This is the 4th time I've done each of these things, so I'm used to this work even with the blanks. Besides, with my cheat, I can save time for the most part, so I get it done easily. Now this is Liddy's room from today onwards. It doesn't have proper furniture yet. If you have something you want, just let me know and I'll make it. Thank you. Liddy bowed her head. With this, she moved from the guest room to her new room, and became a member of the Aizu workshop in the earnest. The rooms are now all occupied though. I told you so, Samir said exasperatedly. She was the one who told me to make it because our number may increase again, and since it actually happened, I have no way to refute. I wonder if it's better to make a new room. If it's a storeroom, shouldn't it be made outside? I replied to Diana's words. No, I think our family will grow again, boss. This time it was Reich who spoke. No, I don't think that will be the case. I argued back, but Samir, Diana, Reich and for some reason, Liddy too, clearly doesn't believe me. For example, Helen is going to come. Ah, that's right. That person also likes boss after all. Diana, Samir and Reich are talking about the possibility of Helen coming. Liddy is joining in between and I was ignored. That said, 3 women gathering in one place is already a crowd, what more of 4 women plus 1? I made a little escape from reality. No, she won't be coming here. Somehow I break into their conversation. As far as I can tell, Helen probably likes her life as she fights around. When I said that. But sometimes she comes back. Maybe she'll come back to live in this house at that time. Diana argued back to me. Well, I'm at a disadvantage. Oops, I have to prepare dinner now. Today is the anniversary of the opening of Liddy's room. The 4 cried, "You are running away." But they returned to the discussion about the possibility of Helen coming soon, and whether to add more rooms. Chapter 146. First operation. In the end, the extension of the room was postponed. When I asked everyone about it while we are having a little luxurious dinner to commemorate the completion of the room, they said that if the number of people increase in the future, the guest room should be used first. And a room should be added in that interim. There are also many people at home, and if I consider to make Kururu help us, we will be able to work much more smoothly than before. We did not press on the matter about more people in the future. And truthfully, I'm unwilling. The next day. It's the day we'll go to Camilo's store to wholesale the goods. After finishing the morning routine, including fetching water, Reich and Diana attached the brace to Kururu. The other 3, me included, loaded the items on the cart. During the renovation, I have built a simple coachman stand, a chair on which the coachman can sit, and a bench on which several people can sit on. Reich sits on the coachman's stand after the cart was connected to Kururu's brace. The rest of us sat on the bench. I can feel the sinking of the spring when we get in. Even if we put our luggage together, it doesn't feel like the springs are pressed to the lowest. We are going to load iron ores, charcoal, salt and other things on our way back, so it would have been a complete failure if the spring is at the bottom at this point. I'm relieved that it didn't happen that way. I made it with cheats so it's acceptable to some extent, but I'm still worried until I try to ride on it like this. Kurururu. Kururu cries loudly and begins to walk. It's not a rubber tire, so it's not as comfortable as the cars in the previous world, but it's still better than nothing. There is almost no large rocky movement that would push you up. Instead, there is a kind of shaking or something like that. The only thing that reduces the shaking is the friction between the leaf springs, so the shaking feels a little continual. But whether it is enough to get you dizzy or not depends on the person. Kururu is in a good mood as he pulls the cart after a long while. We are inside the forest, so our speed is slow. It's still as fast as human jogging though. The other day, I had Kururu pull it on my way home. Since it wasn't equipped with a suspension system, our pace was slowed down. But if we can move in the forest at this speed, I feel that we can reach the city much faster. Well, that would be obvious because the speed was different, but as I expected, we left the forest much faster than usual. From here on, it will be the main road. When we entered the main road, our speed increased further. We are now as fast as a human running, or it's as fast as riding a bicycle. As a result, the swaying increases, but it is not that severe. The load on the carriage also shakes, but it does not bounce, and of course, it does not fall over. If various types of carriages could run at this speed, instead of the current one-way trip that takes 1 day, it would be possible to make a one-day trip from the town to the capital. This will not only increase the speed of distribution of goods, but it will also increase the speed of information transmission. There is no doubt that it will have a variety of effects. The watchdog said that my existence will not have a significant impact on this world, but I wonder if that's true. Or perhaps she meant to say that the spread of things that exist in principle is not an influence, as it only moves the needle forward a little. Since we are moving at a speed of a human running, the amount of caution to be exercised was also lessened. Well, that bandit need to run if he wants to catch up with this dragon cart, unless that guy is riding a horse, of course. Even if he tried to stop Kururu with a bow, it would be difficult to hit a target moving at a reasonable speed in their first shot. Anyone who can do that will not be a bandit because there's a way to make a living in this world without being a thief. Nevertheless, we can't be completely unguarded, so we still have to keep our eyes on our surroundings and be alert. I should ask Camilo some news about that rumored bandit when we get to the store. The usual guard stood at the entrance of the town. Looking at his weapon, it turned into a halberd. Oh, finally, even the guards in this town were formally trained. The guard seemed a little surprised to see the dragon cart, but when he saw us, "Oh, it's you guys." It seems that he was convinced. Looks like we are thought to be a unique group. Well, since 5 people from 4 different races are together, that may be right. Hello. I greeted from the loading platform. I don't think I'll need to tell you this, but just be careful not to hit people. Yes, that's a given. I think Kururu is smart enough so it'll be fine. I've become a doting parent too. As a matter of fact, Kururu was walking quietly and slowly inside the town. Probably because a smrik is rare, I feel that Kururu is getting more attention than Liddy, who's an elf. Paying attention to some people's gaze, some were looking around the wheels dash to be precise, the suspension part. Yes, that's right, I want you to replicate this. Aizu Workshops, Fat Cat Mark Suspension. Kidding, I have no intention of doing anything like that. This is a world where there is no patent system or utility model system, and I have no intention of making a profit from this. Rather than that, I'm thinking of teaching Camilo about it if he asks. Slowly, the dragon cart, which traveled through the town at the speed of a person's walking pace, arrived at Camilo's store. This is the end of the first drive with the improved cart. It's not a bad ride. While I was thinking so, the dragon cart entered the warehouse of Camilo's store. Chapter 147. Encounter. Kururu stopped quietly in the warehouse of Camilo's store. We all work together to undo the brace from the cart. Kururu shakes its body like a dog rising from the water. Coo. Kururu sounded quietly. While asking the clerk to prepare some water and fodder, I take Kururu to the back of the store where we first met Kururu. Wait here quietly, all right? Diana speaks to Kururu and gently taps its nape. Kururu. Kururu made a sound as if he understood, then he sat down there. All right, it's a clever one indeed. Soon after the 5 of us entered the negotiation room, Camilo and Clarkson came. After exchanging greetings, I took out the pouch from my pocket. It's the pouch full of gold coins that Marius gave me. Take the price of the smrik from here. When I put the pouch on the table, Camilo looked at the contents. There's a lot in here. It's a gift from His Excellency. Haha, he thought that the one last time was still insufficient. He got a strong sense of duty. Camilo seemed to have guessed the situation. His words were ironic, but his expression is gentle. Well, he is a kind man at heart. It's just that when it comes to profit and loss, he does some cold-hearted calculation. All right then, I'll get this much for everything. Camilo takes out some gold coins from the pouch. It's less than I expected. Is it sufficient with only that? Yes. A certain nobleman in the empire has fallen. I grabbed it at a low price as they also have a trouble of selling it. So even with this, I'm still making a lot of money. The empire is the kingdom next to our country. It haven't reached the stage where we're at war, but I heard that there are occasional skirmishes at the border. Of course, I heard this from Camilo. I see. That's good then. The possibility of Camilo feeling reluctant to make me pay crossed my mind, but I have to trust his pride as a merchant. However, was he also expanding his business to neighboring countries? I suppose there is no particular liability for that, but there seems to be a lot of risk in doing business in another place that the country don't get along with. Well, I guess Camilo's talent as a merchant is to manage that area. How is the smrik? It's smart and it helped me a lot. By the way, is it a male or a female? I heard that it's a female. Kururu is a girl, I'm the only man in Aizu workshop when I felt a little melancholy. So. Camilo suddenly lowered his voice a little. We leaned forward naturally. What is the mechanism of the cart you are on? Are talking about the leaf spring suspension. What is that? It's amazing to know that he quickly heard about it, even though it hasn't been long since we came. I then talked about its simple mechanics and effects without hiding anything in particular. So if it can suppress the impact from the road and absorb the bumpiness, is it okay to run at high speed? There will be limits, but yes, you can. If it's done well, I think you can make a round trip between cities in just a day. I see. Camilo begins to ponder. If you're a merchant who goes to a neighboring country to do business, the increase in speed per cart is not something to be scoffed at, and if what I'm saying is true, it's easy to imagine that this is a technology you'd want to have. If you want, you can imitate it. I won't complain about it and I don't need any money. Really? Camilo made a loud voice while standing up, which is so unusual of him. Seeing that we were surprised, he quickly sit down. I'm amazed that even Clarkson was also surprised. Ahem. Thank you, but I'll give you a corresponding thing as thanks. His tone has regained composure, but the excitement has not disappeared from his face. He must have been really anxious. Camilo gives instructions to the clerk. He made the usual assessment of the purchase, and then he noted down the structure of the suspension. I offered to help him with the notes, but he said he would try to do it himself. If it didn't work out, we'd discuss it again when we came back in 2 weeks. After that, we chatted and exchanged information about the happenings in the world. Marius's position seems to be stable due to his achievements in defeating the monsters. It's a good thing that I was of help to him. I also heard that there are still occasional skirmishes near the borders of the demon country. There haven't been any large-scale battles, and neither seems to have a big impact. It appears that there is a mine near the border and there is a problem of sovereignty on that. It seems that the borderline was tentatively drawn due to the dispute over the ownership there. Given that, this is not because the other party is from the demon country. By the way, what happened to that rumored bandit? I haven't heard anything about him being caught yet. I see. If he was already caught, I would have less worries about returning home. There seems to be no good news on that though. I heard he won't cause harm, but still, be careful when you go home. Thanks. That's a given. We shook hands lightly, and then we leave the negotiation room. Kiruru was quietly waiting behind the store as she was told. Diana was so moved that she was stroking Kiruru's head. Oi, she might dislike it if you do too much. I handed 1 silver coin to the clerk who brought the fodder and water, and then we connected Kiruru to the cart again and left the warehouse. Today's luggage should be quite heavy because aside from the usual items, there is clay for molding, but Kiruru is all good. I was relieved that the suspension was still holding up. It will be tough if it collapses on our way home. As we go through the town, we get the same attention like when we went in a while ago. It can't be helped for Kiruru's case, but I want Camilo to do his best to make the suspension known. I would be happy if they could get accustomed to such scenery in the town. We nodded to the guard, passed by and then we exited the city. The road was as tranquil as ever, and it was easy to let your guard down. Come to think of it, we overlooked one thing. How can one stop a cart that can't be stopped by running or shooting after it? Right then, a person appeared and stands in the middle of a road that is somewhat far from the city. With a sword in hand, that person yelled, "You there? Stop. If you don't stop, I'll kill you." Yes, the figure just blocked the road. I instructed Reich to stop, and then I observed the figure. Chapter 148. One solution. Kiruru slowly stops walking. I glanced back, but there was no other presence. Boss, what should we do? For now, let's listen to what he wants to say. Understood. Reich stays still, holding Kiruru's reins. All right, don't move. The figure with the sword ordered that. The whole body is covered with a cloak and a hood, and the figure cannot be seen well. From the voice, the person is more likely a woman, but I'm not too sure. I told Diana and Samia to be vigilant, in case someone used their bow at us while this guy is approaching. Of course, I'm on it too. But of course, if it's a normal bandit, his companions should have appeared here by now, and they would either took a person, money or Kiruru. There is no sign of them though. So in this case, this one is not an ordinary bandit. Maybe this guy is that rumored bandit. Probably. Samia whispered to me. That's right, if he's not a normal bandit, then he's none other than the bandit we've heard so much about. When I checked it earlier, there was no other presence behind us. If it is a group bandit, another person will be positioned behind us so that we will not be able to make a U-turn. In the first place, it is very wrong for a bandit to appear in front of a running wagon, in our case, a dragon cart. A more intelligent person would have put a log on the road as an obstacle, or make a play to pretend that he was sick. Since he did not do any of these things, he is not an ordinary bandit. The only possibility left is that he is the bandit who has not been caught yet. This is also why I intentionally made Reich stop. I wanted to know his purpose. Otherwise we would have shot him with a bow or we could have turned back. Anyways, he's surprisingly sloppy. That's right. Of course, I'm wary of him. But if Kiruru suddenly starts running, I think this guy won't be able to put up a fight. Perhaps is it his first time to stop a cart? I don't think he got much experience on this. Because of this, he was not caught until now. Right. I can only agree with Diana's whisper. Then, I heard Liddy whispering with a little tension. That is a demon. That one. He has this stagnant magical power around him. I squinted and looked at the figure, but I can't tell. I wonder if I should learn from Liddy soon. The figure pointed the tip of his sword toward Kiruru. Diana, Kiruru's doting mother, is about to rush out, but I stopped her. Okay, you there. Give me the weapon you have. The demon commanded Reich. Reich looks back at me. I nod at her. Reich takes her hand off the reins, pulls out her self-defense knife, and throws it into the air with its scabbard. The demon picks it up defenselessly. If I were to slash him from this loading platform, I think I could have done it. However, I decided to watch his every move to see what the thief who seems to be looking for something is searching for. Of course, I'll be ready to pounce the moment one of us is about to be harmed. Ah! The demon who was observing the knife he picked up screamed. We instinctively touched the handle of our swords. The air was suddenly filled with a deadly atmosphere. Just when I thought I have to slash him. Hey you guys, where did you get this? When questioned like that by the demon while holding the knife carefully, we look at each other. We laughed involuntarily the next moment. What's funny? Tell me where to get it. The demon was half flustered and he is also quite vexed. I understand his feelings, but I want to let him know our side as well. Where did we get it? I made it myself. I erased my murderous aura and replied to him with a laugh. Ha! A stupefied voice escaped from his mouth. We just wholesaled it to the delivery destination, and we are now about to go home. If your purpose is our product, you need to put down your sword. We can talk afterwards. I could indirectly arrest him as it is any moment. I didn't realize it when I was training in the evening, which I'm still doing, but my strength is definitely getting higher. I guess having a strong base is not quite the same thing. If he doesn't put down his sword, I'll have to subdue him by force and get him to talk, but I have to be prepared for some injury. Of course, I'd like to avoid that if possible. The demon hesitated for a while, but he soon put away his sword. Good choice. It would have been troublesome if you keep at it. Get in here first. Looks like the position of the demon and us are reversed. But if the guards actually see this kind of scene, there is no choice but to surrender him. The demon boarded slowly. He is wary of us, I guess. Well, I'm wary of him too, but the cheat tells me that he's a little stronger than Diana and not as good as Helen. I can stand against him in that case. I was looking for a weapon with this stamp. I want to have one. The demon sitting on the loading platform said so, showing the knife handle. She's pointing at the engraving of the fat cat. I see, so it's our product that he is looking for her. I thought there were a good number of them around here, but I guess not. Camilo seems to be selling them in the Empire, so maybe the high-end models with engravings are mainly sold there for profit. As I said earlier, I made it. I pulled out my own knife from my bosom and showed him the hilt. Of course, it has the same engraving. When I look around, the other three also showed him theirs in the same way. Well, it's possible that we all simply bought Aizu Workshop's products. However, from the point of view of those who were looking for Aizu Workshop's weapons, it would be that obtaining one is quite a trivial matter. If you're saying the truth, I want you to make me a weapon. The demon bowed to me. I don't think he's bad deep inside. Oh well, I think I'm trusting him a little too easily. It's hard to get rid of this kind of perception from the previous world. I'd like to say that I'm okay with that, but when it's a custom order, there are conditions. You have to come to our place alone. I'll tell you the location, so come back tomorrow. Understood. I'll do that. When I said that, the demon agreed easily. Before we approached the entrance to the forest, we parted from the demon. There are a lot of things to worry about, but I'll ask them when he comes to our house. I'm already in trouble, but I hope it won't be any more troublesome. With that in mind, Kiruru's cart went inside the forest. Chapter 149. Determination. We parted ways with the demon, and then we safely arrived home. Despite that encounter, thanks to Kiruru, the time we got home is not much different from when we were pulling it manually. After removing Kiruru's brace and washing up, we gathered in the living room. This should have been usually the time we do what we want. Do you think he will come tomorrow? I think he will come. We were now having a discussion on how to deal with the demon. Liddy was the one who replied to my first question. Demons are as good at handling magical powers as the elves, so I think he'll get to this house that can ward off people. Then it is unlikely that he couldn't cross the forest. I was able to take a leisurely observation of him only because I knew that if something is to happen, I could immediately counter him. Although he is about that level in terms of ability, it is not that he can't come to our house. The other thing is, I wonder if it's okay to make weapons for the demons. According to my installed knowledge, there was a large-scale war 600 years ago, but in recent years only skirmishes have occurred. If that is the case, the empire as seen from the kingdom is no different. Then, as for me, a blacksmith who came from the north and settled on his own, it doesn't matter whether my weapons flow to the empire or the demon race. But, is that really the case? That's fine for me. I was just surprised to see one for the first time. Me too. Samir and Reich don't seem to care. It doesn't matter even if that person is a demon. If you hide it from brother or did it for profit, it might be said that you are a spy. However, Aizu is just a blacksmith, so you don't have to worry about it, you know. It was Diana who said that. Well, yes, if you treat people in the enemy country with hospitality, you will be perceived in various ways. If there's a battle with the demon country, it might be my custom model weapon that would hurt your brother. Are you really fine with that? That's all happening now, you know. By the time Helen has your weapon, such possibility is already there in every war zone. That's true. As a mercenary, there is no guarantee that Helen will always participate in war as the kingdom's ally. It is not impossible to say that Marius will be dispatched there. Wait, was Diana already prepared for that? I wasn't aware of it until I was told. I no longer worry about what I'm making, but I guess I still need to keep such circumstances in mind at all times. We can't deny that our outlook on them are complex. They are born with a stagnant magic after all. They're probably the most incompatible with us elves. But it's been 600 years since the war, and I don't think many people would mind if we made a weapon or two for them, let alone if we were talking about a steady supply. Finally, Lydie answered. Ode Ash, the elves who live with beautiful magical power and the demons with stagnant magical power are incompatible. Well, it is said that monsters are born from the stagnant magical power, so I think it is natural that they are incompatible with each other. Generally, it's something like it's not that I don't mind, but isn't it okay? Then, it doesn't matter where or what a power that doesn't belong to anywhere provides. Although I'm on good terms with the Count of the Kingdom, there is nothing more than getting along well with him. Then lastly, what should we do with the fact that he is a bandit? It's usually a crime to hide a bandit. Right. To be honest, I think it's a rather dangerous act that I missed today. But there is no real damage. Speaking of that, we are always on the alert. There was no guarantee that it wouldn't escalate. Reich voiced out. That's also right. If he goes back after I made him a weapon, that bandit would be no more. I feel like it will be fine, but am I too optimistic? You mean, they'll think that the bandit has moved his attack site somewhere else, right? Diana answered my question. That's right. However, although it will improve the security in the main road, I feel sorry knowing the fact that those guards will patrol around the area unnecessarily until then. It can't be helped then, let's ask the help of Camilo and Marius. I decided to ask the help of the Count family directly. Let's just say it's a good thing that we have a mutually beneficial relationship with each other. What are you going to do? The next time we went to Camilo's store for wholesale, if they haven't been notified yet, I would tell him the facts. I'll ask him to bring a document containing the facts to Marius. I think it's a good idea to get Marius to tell the guards that the bandit has moved to another place, so they could gradually reduce their patrol. Although he's my older brother, I don't want Aizu to owe him too much, but it can't be helped. Well, yeah. I don't think it's that big of a debt, I'm ready to repay as much as I can too. I'm sure you're thinking that I'm a bit too nice for sacrificing myself for a stranger from a demon race, but yeah, this is my way. After discussing it for a while, it was decided that I will make it when he comes. We will not treat him particularly badly, and he will have to swear that he'll return to his home country once he gets the weapon. I still have a little hesitation about making a weapon for someone who is clearly an enemy of my friends, but I guess this is where I have to make up my mind as a blacksmith. In the end, it's up to me whether I'll make it or not. I stood up to prepare for our supper while watching the three of them, who weren't very familiar with the demon race, ask Lydie various questions. Chapter 150. Next order. The next day after dawn, I went to fetch water with Kururu. When we're back, I found a suspicious figure in front of the house with his whole body covered with a cloak or something like that. Speaking of this person who had his whole body covered, I can only think of one person who would appear here at this time. That said, the chances of him being a different person isn't zero, so I gently lowered the water vat and approached him, ready to draw my knife anytime. "Who are you?" I called out to whoever it was. The voice that replied back was exactly as what I expected. "I came because you told me to come here, but you are too cautious though." The voice is tinged with a dissatisfaction, but it's definitely the voice I heard yesterday. I can't see his face through the hood, so I can't really tell. That's because I couldn't tell if it was really you, you know. Is that so? After saying that, the demon took off his hood. Short silver hair with almond-shaped eyes, long ears and brown skin with tattoos like the tribal tattoos in the previous world. Although it blends with the tattoos, there is a sword scar around the left eye. Still, the whole face can be said to be a beautiful woman. Based from the knowledge in the previous world, she is considered to be a dark elf. With the voice and face structure, I was convinced that the person in front of me is definitely a woman. The only men I know are Camilo, Marius, Oyerson and the others. I wonder if there is someone else that has a close connection with women. With this, you'll recognize me next time, right? The demon woman said proudly. Well, I hope you could show your face next time. I'll do that. Wait there for the time being. I have to bring the water inside. I went back to where I placed the water vat and carried it back. If something happens, I have to fight back with the preparedness that this water vat will break. Kiruru's water vat was left by the side of the house, and I already asked Kiruru to return to her hut. As I bring the water vat home, I asked, "Did you come here smoothly?" "No, the protection that could ward off people was a little tricky. I'm not very good at magic, you see." "I see. She came relatively smoothly though. Well, let's just leave it as that. Since you're here this early in the morning, you haven't eaten yet, right?" "Yes." "Then, let's have breakfast together. Do wash up the dirt on your trip here in the guest room first. Is it okay?" "Yes, customers are guests after all. A bandit may be a criminal, but customers are to be treated as a guest, regardless if he has committed a serious crime. This is also what I decided yesterday. From the water vat that I brought in, I prepared a small water bucket for the guest and fill it with water." Demon woman is a bit. "By the way, what's your name?" "Nilda." "Then, Nilda, this is the guest room. You can use this for water and cloth. I'll call you when I have prepared the meal so you can relax after cleaning your body." "All right." Nilda nodded obediently and entered the guest room. "Is she here?" Just then, Diana and everyone got up. "Yeah, I just told her to unload her luggage and wash up." "Okay. Then we have to prepare too." "Right." We all did our morning routine. Samir went inside the guest room and collected some laundry as usual. It helps because as a man, I can't do that. After the work in the morning and as the breakfast is ready, I sent Samir to call Nilda. Everyone, including Nilda, is now at the table. When we put our hands together to do the usual itadakimasu, Nilda-san also copied us and put her hands together and said itadakimasu in a small voice. "I'm asking you again, but can you tell everyone your name? We can't call you demon all the time, you see." While eating, I urged Nilda to reintroduce herself. Nilda looked dissatisfied for a moment, but, "I'm Nilda." She introduced herself curtly. Her line of sight is focused on Liddy, who looks as usual. Well, it's what she appears to be. It's like there is power in her eyes, or rather, there's this spark in the background, and her aura can be seen. It feels like that. This could be because their ecology is incompatible with each other. They have this atmosphere like the dragon and tiger are competing against each other. Well, there's actually a real tiger here, but Samir is eating breakfast with relish without minding about them. "So, how did you know about our product?" I asked Nilda, to change the atmosphere. "When I was patrolling the boundary between the demon world and the human world, I came across a reconnaissance unit on the human side. I asked the red-haired woman there named Helen." Nilda said demon world and the human world, but the world and space-time are not different. The area where the demons live is called the demon world, and the area where humans live is called the human world. It is one of the remnants of the war 600 years ago. Read Helen, huh? Is it the lightning sword? I heard it was called Thunderbolt. She did say that she'd be out of the area for a while. She's been to the demon world, huh? and I noticed that she changed its name. Thunderbolt. Well, it's certainly fast. I came across the Thunderbolt core and got into a fight. But I was outmatched. They didn't kill me, but the Thunderbolt destroyed all my weapons in a blink of an eye. Well, it's my custom model after all, so it can easily break ordinary steel. However, if she continues to use it like that, even if it is a custom model, it also has its limit. When she comes back, I'll have to fix it. I saw it coming, so I tried to keep her from destroying my weapon, but it was still destroyed before I knew it. That's when she said to me, "You're good. If you had the same weapon as me, maybe you could have done more." Then you heard about it, huh? Nilda nodded. Yes. I said I also want to get such weapon. She said, "This gem was specially made for me. It's not that easy to get." Around that time, the other demon troop who heard the sound arrived. The Thunderbolt Corps could have taken care of them too, but for some reason they retreated. She showed me the engraving on the hilt and said, "If you really want one, find a craftsman who makes weapons with this engraving." Comma is what she said. I see. That's why I took a leave and came to look for it. Other than the fact that the craftsman who made it was around here, I didn't know anything else, so I was looking for it there. As it's around here, I thought she must have bought it directly from the craftsman or from a merchant whom the craftsman wholesaled it to. Maybe as she didn't have the time, so Helen was not able to tell her the place directly. So, that's how it came to the emergence of a bandit looking for a weapon engraved with a fat cat. Helen wouldn't have expected this to happen too. Then, those you have attacked, why did they not remember your face? I didn't reveal my face in the first place, and in that state, the magic of forgetfulness works well. When I glanced at Liddy nodded to me. There's magic like that, huh? She said she was not good at it, but she seems to be able to use magic, as long as the conditions are met. Are you done with your inquiries? Oh, yes, for now. I see. But it's good, the food here is delicious. It's worth it if you say that. After this, we finished breakfast without much conversation. Well, I'm not too sure if I should ask about the demon world. After we had our breakfast and cleaning up, I moved to the workshop. I then worshipped the Kamadana. Nilda imitated what she saw and worshipped as well. As a demon, you don't have to do it if you're not supposed to pray to a human god. There is no such thing. I just imitate it because I think it's an interesting custom. Oh, I see. Is the demon race non-religious? Or maybe, the demon king is already the one at the highest position or something like that. After the worship, Reich and the others prepare to make sheet metal. I lit it up as it was quicker for me to lit the furnace with magic. Nilda's gaze pisses me, but there's something I need to ask her now. Nilda and I moved to the business meeting space in the workshop, although there are only tables and chairs, and sit face to face. So, what kind of weapon do you want? Oh, right. It may be unfamiliar to humans, but it's better if it's a thin, long single-edged sword, rather than a wide double-edged sword. A weapon for slashing, huh? Should it be gently curved? That's right. I used a knife to quickly scrape the wood that was placed in the workshop. The finished product was not varnished or anything, but it was the kind of thing that every boy would buy on a school trip in the previous world. Is this kind of shape okay? That's exactly what I want. This is it, huh? The weapon Nilda wanted is a katana. Chapter 151. Preparation for making a sword. A katana, huh? As a former Japanese, I'm a little excited about this request. However, even though it is a katana, I feel that it is impossible for me to make a proper Japanese sword. It's possible to make it using my cheats, but if even I can use cheats in this world, the material will not be the same as Tamahagane. It doesn't make sense to cover custom model quality steel with high-end model quality steel. However, this also has little meaning to it, since there's also Reich's training. I'm planning to cover the custom-made model steel with custom-made model steel. Okay, then let's go out to the garden for a moment. Bring your specialized weapon. I said to Nilda. Why? I'll look at how you handle your specialized weapon and decide on the length and weight. Got it. Nilda walked out of the workshop and came right back. She came back with a sword in her hand. The sword is properly held in her hand. I opened the door on the workshop side and went outside. Nilda followed after. Nilda doesn't have the benefit of slashing me here or in the yard, but I've changed the position of holding my knife, just in case she makes a strange move. Kaya. The moment she went out into the garden, Nilda made a short scream. She was surprised as Kiruru was right next to the door. Why did you come out? Kiruru. Okay. It's dangerous, so stay further. As she nuzzled on my head, I stroked Kiruru's neck. Kiruru obediently sit a little further away and began to bite the grass around her. Such a clever child. Oh, come to think of it, there was a Soryu in your house. Yes. She's pulling the cart when you met her. Ah, yeah. Surprisingly, you've taken care of it well. Isn't this the case with a normal Soryu? I haven't seen other Soryu, so I don't know much. There are Soryu in the demon world, but they're more aggressive. It's not so bad that they don't listen to you at all, but it's hard to handle them because they often have bad mood. Head Ash. It's different depending on the Soryu, huh? I'm not sure. At least they are undoubtedly different from the Soryu in your house. I make a sound like I'm not interested. But I have a hunch. The running dragon also eats something that is normally recognized as food, just like Kiruru eating grass, but their real food is magical power. Demons are said to be born with stagnant magic in their bodies. The land in the demon world probably has a lot of stagnant magic. If they continue to consume this magical power as food, their temperament may become more like that of those fierce monsters. Of course, all of these are just my speculations. But if the difference in temperament between Kiruru and the Soryu in the demon world is quite large, I think it is highly possible that the difference is due to the difference in the quality of magical power. However, if that's the case, I wonder if the demon world is producing monsters at a mad pace. When Nilda gets used to us, and we get used to her, it might be a good idea to ask her, should I swing it here? Yes. It doesn't matter if it's like a dance performance or training. However, it's more helpful if you move as close to what you do during the actual battle as possible. I understand. Nilda nodded, pulled out her sword and began to slash it. It's still not as good as Helen, but it's a little better than Diana. However, although she wants something like a katana, what she's swinging now is an ordinary sword. There is no problem in making a katana, but let's ask her then. It seems that the one you wanted earlier, and the one you're wielding now have different shapes. The one with the same shape was destroyed by that thunderbolt. This one can be used as a makeshift. While wielding her sword, Nilda answers grumpily. I see. Sorry for asking such question. No. It's because of my inexperience to begin with. Then, for about a quarter of an hour, I observed Nilda wielding a sword. So, is it about this long? I demonstrated the length to Nilda with both hands. It's a little long to call it wakizashi. It's better to say it's like a kadachi. Isn't it a little short? Well, you're the same as Helen. You move fast, right? I think it's better for it to be short so it's easy to move. I will make something lighter in weight. I will adjust this area after it is made. Okay, I'll leave it to you. Now I can see the final shape. All I have to do is make it. I told Kiruru that I'll see her later, and then I returned to the workshop with Nilda behind me. Chapter 152. Day 1 of sword making. When Nilda and I returned to the workshop, there are already a lot of sheet metal produced. Basically, it's just a matter of pouring into a sand mold and doing a little processing, so if 3 out of the 4 of us are familiar with the process, it's natural that the production speed will increase. Well, let's get started. I said as I roll up my sleeves. Can I watch it? Nilda asked. I don't mind. However, I don't think it's going to be interesting to watch. You can go for a walk in the forest or practice in the garden, if you like. Even if the firing process, Sunobe, went well because I'll be stretching it to the desired length, I will just be hitting the material. Quenching, which is the highlight of the process, I think, is still to come. Nice. I've been interested in this for a long time. Since I don't have many opportunities to see it in my hometown, I want to see it now. Oh Ash, okay then. While answering, I pick some of the sheet metal they made earlier. Grab one of them with a pincer and put it on the fire bed. First, I'll temper the sheet metal itself. Normally, this is where you will remove inhomogeneous parts of the material. However, in the case of my cheat, it is possible to make a homogeneous and high-quality product without doing so. So although it exists as a similar process, what I'm doing is completely different. The sheet metal is heated in the fire bed to fix the inhomogeneity, and then it is filled with magic power. This is not a high-end model but a custom model, so I fully utilized my cheat. Some inhomogeneity is acceptable for high-end models, but custom models should not have any inhomogeneity. I have a feeling that if I used my cheats, I will be able to make high-strength steel sooner or later. However, even if I do make it, there is no use for it in this world. Then, the high-quality sheet metal made in this way is piled up, heated in the fire bed, and then forged together to make two lumps. At this time, iron oxide is formed around the sheet metal, so to prevent this from happening, straw ashes are sprinkled around the sheet metal. I heat it up, hammered it, put a chisel and fold it back. This part is also when you should normally be conscious of how the pattern of the iron would appear. However, if I do it with a custom model using cheat, it will become homogeneous by all means. That's why most of the patterns would hardly appear. What I'm doing now is just the work to make a lump. This is a major issue for the future though. I wish I could take advantage of the non-homogeneous texture while maintaining the quality with my cheat. Since this is a custom-made model, it is taking more time than usual. Then, a little time after lunch, the two lumps were finally finished. Reich, a minute please. Yes. What is it? From this point, I'll do one of the important parts of making a sword called katana in the north, so please watch. I understand. Thank you, boss. I elongate one lump and flatten the other. When the elongated one gets cold, I heat up the flat one. Usually, this flat one uses hard steel, and the elongated one uses soft steel. It will break if it's hard steel alone, and it will bend if it's just a soft steel. In this case, there is not much difference because it is like a cheat high-quality steel. Even if the structure is soft, it will harden because of magical power. Well, except in the case of products that do not contain much magic power like general models of course. When the flat one has reached the temperature where it can be processed, I bend it into a U shape, and then I put the elongated one there. In the case of Japanese swords, this is similar to the process called kobuse. In this way, steels with two different properties are combined into one. This makes it possible to combine the sharpness and bending resistance of hard steel with the breaking resistance of soft steel. I see. This is a northern technique, huh? That's right. In my installed knowledge, I know there are similar weapons, so the method is probably the same. I doubt it's that different. At worst, I can just say it's a secret technique. After that, I began on the process of stretching it to the desired size. I dampen the anvil with water, I placed a lump of hot steel on it, and start hammering. As the water evaporates, steam rises, and occasionally, when I struck, a sound like the bursting of gunpowder is heard. When I first made that sound, it surprised everyone on the spot. Sorry. What did you do? Reich asked. By doing that, the surface will be much smoother. I see, there's such an effect, huh? As I'm explaining this, there's a sound from the outside. Kirururu. Oh, I must have surprised Kiruru too. I hurriedly went outside, stroking Kiruru's head. She was right by the workshop. I explained that nothing happened. Kiruru looked a little worried, but she quietly returned to her hut, so I'm relieved. After that, I adjust the width, length, and thickness, while continuing the work of heating and stretching. I only stopped when the dimensions are almost as expected. By the time I noticed it, it was already dark. Well, let's leave the rest of the work tomorrow. While feeling that it's a little regretful, I told myself that overtime is not good and we started cleaning up the workplace. Chapter 153. Day 2 of sword making. Today is the second day of sword making. The next step is hizukuri, which is the process of making the shape of the sword. Reich also observes today's work. Samiya, Diana, and Liddy are making the molds for the swords. Swords made by dwarves, it's quite a romantic story, isn't it? I hope they can do their best to make it. Hizukuri is the process of making a pentagonal sword by heating and beating the sword from a bare rectangle, which is still only a rectangle. Naturally, one vertex of the pentagon becomes the cutting edge. On the opposite side of the tip of the blade is the mune peak, and on the sides of the mune are the shinogi no shinogi, the ground of shinogi. After the blade has been extended, it is heated for about 10 centimeters at a time, and beaten to shape the blade. After that, the stem, which is the part that fits inside the handle, is formed, and the tip of the sword is shaped by dropping the tip of the sword on the peak side into a triangular shape, and tapping it. There are various types of sword tips, such as long, short, round, and straight, but this time, I chose a short rounded tip with a short bore neck. It is said that in the previous world, the shape of a sword can be used to determine the period and the maker of the sword, but in this world, there is no such thing, and it is basically left to my senses. At this time, I also have to consider how much warpage will occur when the sword is hardened afterward. Though I have been allowed to use my cheat to make things much easier, when I make my own swords like this, I can see how much the swordsmiths in the previous world are capable of doing. Working in this way, I have created the shape of the sword I know so well. But of course, it is not yet finished. I waited for the whole thing to cool down before heating it up again. I heat it again, this time at a lower temperature, not so much that it becomes red hot, and then let it cool. After removing the iron oxide film on the surface with the whetstone, the shinogi jai and hirajai, the flat area between the shinogi and the edge of the blade, are hammered. It seems that this tightens the surface and increases the cutting ability. I am not sure if this is true or not since I am cheating. When that process is finished, it is time for the hardening process. The surface of the sword is uneven, no matter how large or small, because the metal is being hammered with a hammer, no matter how much cheat is used. These are then shaved down with a file or a special cane. A custom-made model knife is used as a substitute, since it is not available to flatten them out. Slight distortions can also be adjusted at this stage. The boundary between the stem and the blade is also made at this stage. With this, the process of creating the shape of the sword is finally over. Then the clay used for the mold, whetstone powder and charcoal powder, is mixed to make a clay pot for the baking and firing blade. In the previous world, it seems that each workshop and craftsman has a different formula, but in my case, I leave this to the cheats. I apply a thin coat of burnt blade clay to the entire surface of the sword blade. After applying the clay to the entire surface, the sword is blackened. Now comes the hardest part. At the border between the area that is quenched and the area that is not quenched, a different mixture of tissue will appear on the sword as a blade pattern. The shape of the blade pattern is determined at this stage by applying clay, and there are many different shapes. I will skip the detailed classification, but basically, my preference is either a straight edge with no wavy pattern, a gently wavy wanata, or a more tightly wavy butagunome, but in a sense, it is the best part of the sword, so one's sense is required to decide which one is best. Yoshi. I took a thin stick, made from a piece of wood, and began to apply the clay to the blade. I would have used a brush or something to draft the blade pattern, but I let the cheats take care of that, too. Originally, I had told Reich that I was going to use a brush here. There was no need for her to worry if she suddenly tried to put down the clay, and it didn't work out. This is how I finished applying the burning edge clay. It is thicker on the ridge side and thinner on the blade side. This way, the blade side is harder, and the ridge side is softer for better cutting performance and durability. I was going to finish the hardening process today, but it is getting dark. The hardening itself will be a treat tomorrow. We cleaned up the workshop and went outside to take care of Kiruru, who we hadn't bothered to take care of before preparing for dinner. Kiruru was a little sulky, but when Diana and I petted him, he started running around in a good mood. Chapter 154. Day 3 of sword making. Yesterday, we finished applying the hardening clay to the blade. Today, we will start the finishing work after quenching. I think that quenching is the most important part of sword making. If we fail at this point, the last 2 days will be completely meaningless. Reich and Nilda are observing again today. The other 3 are going out to the fields and foraging. Half of them are going for a walk with Kiruru. After the morning prayer, I saw Samia, Diana and Liddy off and magically lit the fire. I add more charcoal and send the wind with magic, so that the fire will spread to all of them. After a while, I hear a gurgling sound, and the fire is spreading and becoming brighter, so I stop blowing the air and put the entire sword blade deep into the fire. The position of the charcoal is adjusted, so that the entire sword blade is heated evenly, while adding more charcoal, and adjusting the airflow to stabilize the temperature. Everything is done with a cheat. Eventually, the blade of the sword rises to a temperature suitable for quenching. This is the temperature. Yes. I call out to Reich, and a strong reply comes back. Normally, I would have gone at night to determine the temperature by color, but I was using a cheat, and Reich was a dwarf, so he knew the temperature even if it wasn't at night, so I chose a time when the sun was up. As a side effect, even if Nilda had some blacksmithing knowledge, it would be difficult for her to know the exact temperature, but this is a comforting thought, since it would be meaningless if the demons had the ability to detect infrared rays. From what I can see, they are not very knowledgeable about blacksmithing, so I guess it's probably just a matter of time before they get over it. The temperature of the water is now appropriate, and the whole thing is submerged in the tank at once. The temperature of the water in the tank is also important in the hardening process. In the previous world, there is even a story of an apprentice who put his hand into the tank to check the temperature of the water his master used for quenching, only to have his hand cut off. It is such an important thing, but in my case, I have already confirmed it with a cheat, and I have taught it to Reich. You see, I'm the blacksmith of this world, and my senses are more than a cheat. The sword blade, submerged in water and quenched, made a sizzling sound, then a few clunks and clunks. I can feel it in my hand. As the cooling speed is different depending on the burning blade clay, the difference causes contraction, and the blade is warping at this very moment. In the previous world, some people compared this to the sound of a baby being born. The sword blade pulled up from the tank is warped just as I had expected. The center of the warp is a Torii warp in the middle of the blade, and the warp itself is not deep, but shallow. The entire sword is then exposed to the flames of the fire in the fire pit, which is still burning, to raise the temperature slightly, and the slight distortion is then repaired by placing the sword on the stand from which the log was cut. This process also allows the tempered parts to be tempered. After the distortion has been removed and the blade has cooled, the entire blade is sharpened with a rough whetstone to check the edge pattern. The blade is in the shape that I expected. Personally, I think this is what a sword is supposed to look like, and since this is the first sword I am making, I wanted to give it a proper look. Since there seems to be no problem with the overall shape, I sharpened it as it is. Even so, it is not yet the finishing touch, but rather a preparation for the next step, which in the case of model making, would be to spray surfacer, or in the case of cosmetics, the base of the foundation. As the sharpening process progresses, the blade of the sword becomes bright and shiny. I have seen some famous swords in my previous world, and they don't look so bad. However, I am not an expert, but I made it myself, so I don't deny that I have some favoritism. Oh, it's done. Finished. Nilda looked at the sword I was holding up. No, it's not finished yet. What I have to do now is to polish it up. Is that right? The swords of the North can be compared to works of art. What I have in my hands is nothing more than a battle-ready sword. After sharpening and determining the overall shape, I carved a U-shaped stripe high on the ridges of the shinogi jai using a cheat. Some say this is to remove blood from the blade, but in reality, it is simply to reduce weight. Indeed, my cheat tells me that it does not seem to reduce the strength of the sword. Now that the gutter carving is finished, the entire blade side is further cleaned up. This is still the completion of painting in modeling or foundation in cosmetics. The gutter was also polished with a file and a whetstone, so that there would be no unevenness. Now, the sword body is ready for the finishing touches. The next step is the stem basket. The hole is drilled and filed to clean up the shape and surface, but to prevent it from falling off the handle, it is filed one last time, leaving a file mark. In the previous world, it is said that the way of leaving the file marks varies from person to person and workshop to workshop, but I doubt if it is necessary to care about it in this world, so I did not pay attention to it. Finally, it was time for the last step to change the shape. I picked up the tagane and carved an engraving of a fat cat sitting on the blade side of the eye nail hole. Just then, I hear the clang of the clapper in the workshop. Is it that time already? With this next task, the day will be over. Just as I was thinking that, Samir and the others came into the workshop. Oh, what, you're still working on it? Oh, yeah, that's it. I replied to Samir, picked up the tugger again, and cut an inscription on the other side of the cat's engraving. Tanya Iso. Chapter 155. Day 4 of sword making. Okay, so tomorrow when I polish and sharpen the blade, the sword will be complete. Iso. I gently held up the blade, and Nilda called out to me. What's that engraving there? Nilda pointed to a stemmed basket. This one. This is the engraving to show that it is a product of our workshop, and this one shows that I made it, my name. You mean the one with the pattern on it? Yes. I cut the inscription in Japanese kanji characters. This is slightly different from the northern script of this world, or so the installation told me, so it shouldn't be recognizable unless there's someone else in my situation that knew the kanji. Quote, I guess it's our secret script. I implicitly tell her that I can't tell her what they mean. Nilda knows that for a craftsman, secrets are synonymous with life. I see a twinkle in her eye, but you know what I mean, don't you? Even Reich and the others are impressed, saying things like, ha ho ho. One of these days, I may have to think about what would happen if I wrote my name in kanji characters. I can't help but see a future in which names like Diana and Samia will become glittering names, not to mention Reich and Liddy. Doesn't hers have these too? She asks with eyes that are still sparkling. By hers, you mean Helen. There is no custom to put engravings on swords like that at my place, so I don't put engravings on them, but I don't put inscriptions on them either. I didn't put the name on the sword this time because it's a northern sword. I see. I see. Good. Good. Nilda's excitement rises. She seems happy to hear that Helen's doesn't have engravings. I think she sees Helen as her rival. If it wasn't for her being happy over a dangerous weapon, I'd be smiling. Samia, Diana, and Liddy, who were out gathering, picked up some plum-like fruits and a few herbs today. The herbs will be planted tomorrow. I decided to make something like grilled wild boar with these herbs. We have quite a few herbs now. The boar tastes like a wild pig, but I think it's lighter and has less of the wild pig flavor. It seems to be a hit with everyone, so I may try this from time to time. The plum-like fruit is also quite tasty, although it has a few quirks. If I could get a large amount of sugar, I could soak them in hot sake, but sugar is expensive, isn't it? The next morning, after I finished preparing the morning meal, I looked at the small jar. Inside it was a liquid that was bubbling and squishy. I guess this went pretty well. Should I brew it today? The liquid, a yeast solution in which apple yeast is cultivated, flour and water are combined and kneaded together. Let's leave the rest to the yeast. After the morning prayers, we polish the sword blade, which was already shaped and finished yesterday. Reich and the others are going to make swords today. Next to the hurried and loud noise, I quietly began the sharpening process. Sharpening is normally the work of a specialist called a sharpener, and if done properly it usually takes around 2 weeks, sometimes more than half a year, but in my case I have a cheat, and since I don't have all the tools, it is arranged to a level where I don't have any trouble in the actual battle. Generally speaking, the work itself is not very different from that of other knives. Start with a rough grindstone, and then use a fine grindstone to remove the grain of the grindstone. Essentially, the sharpening process is to make the boiling edge and blade pattern look beautiful, but in this case, we are not going to go that far, and in fact, we cannot. While using water mixed with ash, I slowly sharpen the blade of the sword. It is quite difficult to sharpen a short but long enough blade. But thanks to the cheat, I'm getting by. Since I am making this sword, I want to make it as beautiful as possible, even if I can't do it. With this in mind, I polish up the katana and adjusts the blade. Eventually, the entire blade was sharpened to a whitish color, so I wiped it with a mixture of iron powder and oil from the forging process to darken the shinogi jai side, and rubbed it with an iron rod to polish it up. We did this work in a very abbreviated manner and used cheats, so we could have done it quite quickly, but the sun was already setting today. But now I have seen the completion of the katana. All right, it's done. Oh, at last. The katana itself is now complete, although we still need to add the tsubas and the scabbard. There is a beautiful contrast between the blackness of the shinogi jai and the whiteness of the blade. If you look through it in the falling sunlight, you can see the pattern on the blade. I can't wait to try my hand at it. Well, I'll see you tomorrow. I began to tidy up the workshop to prepare for dinner, while I soothed Nilda. Chapter 156. Handle and Guard. During cleanup, the completed katana was once placed under the kamidana, Shinto altar. Shinto altar and swords have a certain atmosphere. It might be possible to make one that is not a custom-made model and display it. I usually prepare dinner after practicing with Diana, but today I have something to do first. Washing my hands clean, I looked at the bread I had prepared in the morning, and found that it had expanded quite a bit. After venting the puffed-up dough and cutting it into 6 pieces, I added water to a pan of hot water, passed a board over it, and laid out the dough I had put together. I hope this works. I headed off to practice with Diana in that state. When I came back, the bread had risen again. This looks like it's ready to bake. Since we don't have an oven, we'll use a pan to turn the heat similarly. Speaking of Dutch ovens, they look cool, but they are not that good. I make soup in one pot and the kamado, and bake bread in the other. Good smells emanate from both. This looks quite promising. Soon both are finished, and we put them on the table. Today's bread is different from usual. Samia's nose twitches. Our usual bread is not fermented, but today's bread is fermented, so it's softer. Hair. Samia tries to poke it, and Reich smacks her hand away. We laughed, said I to Dakimasu, and started eating. While the soup tastes the same as usual, the bread is fluffy and smells slightly of apples, and is delicious. Thank goodness cheats are as effective as blacksmithing for this kind of thing. Oh, it's fluffy. Samia says as she tears the bread into strips. With her mouth, she chewed on it as if to check its softness. Soft bread is delicious, isn't it? Right. Comparable to the ones we used to eat at home. This is Diana. If you are a countess, you would have eaten soft bread every day, and you can trust Diana's evaluation. Eyes oh. With a strange intensity, Nilda, with a mouthful of bread, says, "Hey, what's this?" "What is it?" I winced at the strange power of the words. "Who are you?" "I am just a blacksmith." A mere blacksmith wouldn't live in a place like this, and have the skill to bake a soft loaf of bread, would he? Everyone nodded in agreement with Nilda's words, except me. Then a blacksmith who can do a lot of things. What the hell is that? Nilda was dumbfounded. But if I tell them in detail that I have a cheat, there is no way they will believe me. That'll have to do for now. Mew. Of course, that would never convince me, but when Nilda realized that I had no intention of explaining, she went straight back to eating. The following day, we started working on the other parts of the sword. Specifically, the sword mount, the handle, and the sheath. Normally, each of these would have its own specialist. Although in my case, I can make them into something that can withstand practical use, I wonder how they do it in the north. Maybe I need to go to the north once. First of all, we make the sword collar, which is the most important part that connects the sword mount, the hilt, the blade, and the scabbard. The sword blade is made of a small piece of sheet metal, and the metal collar is made of a metal plate. A small piece of sheet metal is broken and shaped to fit the katana. This process can be done with copper or other materials, or by brazing, but in my case, I use steel to make it fit the blade. The sword is then assembled with the sword guard and sheath, so even though I use cheat, I have to be very careful. Once the shape is made, I press it up to the base of the blade while hammering and tightening it while it is cold. The final position of the blade is determined and polished with the file. The metal collar is sometimes engraved or gold-plated for decoration, but I decided to leave it as it is this time. Next is the sword guard. There are various shapes of sword mounts with holes for kaugai and kagara kozakai, but we decided not to include them this time, and to have them made by the local craftsman if necessary. If this is the case, it is relatively easy to make. In my case, I have the strong advantage of being a cheat, but basically, I just need to round the sheet metal and make a hole for the metal collar to fit in. However, it is too much as it is, so I made it thin, so that the edging can be inserted. If needed, it would be easy to have a local engraver engrave it. And the handle. I made a hole in the wood for the stem basket to fit in, and also made a hole in the handle to match the eye nail holes. Then, leather is wrapped around the stem in a diamond shape, and a part for fitting the handle head is made from steel, and fitted to the end of the wrapped leather to fasten it. This process would normally be wrapped in sharkskin or braided cord, both of which are hard to find in this area, so this is my own arrangement. If northern craftsmen had access to these materials, my work might have been a laughingstock, but I hope they will laugh and forgive me as a result of the efforts of craftsmen from the south. Finally, I had to make the scabbard, but it was getting dark by this point. The metal collar and sword guard were not my specialties, but the handle was, so it took longer than I expected. Still, I wanted to see how it would look at first, so I combined the sword mount, the sword guard, and the hilt. After fitting the sword guard into the metal collar and the stem into the hilt, I inserted a wooden peg and fixed it in place. The sword is now ready to be pulled out. "Oh!" Nilda shouted out unintentionally. With this reaction, I am sure she will be satisfied with the finished product. I put the sword under the altar and started to clean up the workshop. Chapter 157. sheath. After the cleanup is done, it's time for dinner, and today it's unfermented bread as usual. Whether it is the straight method or the medium method, making fermented bread is still time consuming. It's something I'll make once in a while. When I said so, there were no complaints, contrary to my expectations. What kind of aristocrat would serve soft bread every day in an ordinary blacksmith shop? When Nilda said this with a dismayed voice, everyone around her nodded their heads. It is certainly true if you think about it. Even if soft bread is common in this world, it's not as if commoners who are not nobles can eat it regularly. I see. Then, Nilda, who was able to eat it as a guest, was lucky. Nilda nodded her head, and the conversation about the bread was cut short. After 4 or 5 days of staying here, Nilda seems to have gotten used to it a little, and she is talking more and more at meals. Nilda talked as much as she could about the demon world yesterday and today. Nilda told us as much as she could about the magical world, that the demons hardly need to replenish their magical power, and that the boundaries, are quite far from these forests. The boundary, is quite far from this forest, and the magical power is even stronger in the demon world than in this forest. However, he did not tell us the exact geography. Anyway, accurate geography in any era in any world is military information. In addition, from what he told me, it seems that the way of life is not so different from ours. One major difference is that the high concentration of magic means that demons are more likely to occur, but even if demons do occur, the demon tribe is not attacked by demons. Even though the demons do not attack them, they do not seem to follow their orders. They are like stray dogs to us. When I think of the hobgoblins I have fought, they are quite dangerous even for stray dogs. Merchants from the human world also seem to come and go somewhat. Due to the excessive amount of magic, it seems that ordinary humans can't go very far into the world, and the only trade seems to take place at the edge of the demon world. Perhaps Camilo may have business dealings with them as well. I wouldn't bother to ask, though. On the next day, the final process of making a katana, the sheath, is finally done. Normally, this should be made by a professional craftsman, but if it is not elaborate at all, it can be done with a cheat. The external shape of the scabbard itself is not difficult to do with cheats. We have made sheaths for knives and swords before, and they are the same. But since katanas are curved, the scabbard must also match the curvature of the katana. If the curvature is not matched, it will affect the drawing and insertion of the katana. I don't know if the same thing is said in the north, but this is the origin of the phrase "the curve doesn't match." The wood in the workshop is shaved with a knife to get the general shape of the katana. After that, the part where the katana body is to be housed is made by shaving the actual piece of wood. Only the blade and the metal collar should touch the scabbard, the rest should not. The kikuchi of the scabbard should be slightly narrower than the metal collar to prevent the sword from falling out. The two pieces are made one on each side and glued together with rice glue, but since rice glue is not available, glue is made with glue and kawa. I made sure to minimize the number of adhesion points, so that it would not be difficult to peel off. After attaching the left and right sides, the outer shape of the piece was cleaned up. There is no lacquer, so the wood is left blank this time. However, if I wanted something more beautiful, I would have to have it made by the local craftsman. After laminating the left and right sides, sheet metal is processed to make parts. These parts are the kichikimono, mouth metal, to fasten around the kiguchi, the ring to fasten the sheath, the kurigata, chestnut shape, through which the lower cord for wearing the sword is threaded, and the part to be fitted to the butt side of the sheath, the nashi kajiri, bottom part. While hammering and tightening the ring that holds the sheath in place, the left and right sides of the sheath are secured so that they do not come off. Attach the kurigata to the ring. After that, the kuchi metal fittings are attached to the kajiri kuchi. Lastly, the bottom of the scabbard, also designed to simply cover the scabbard, is fitted, and the scabbard is finally complete. However, the process would normally take 2 to 3 weeks, including the lacquering and other processes, of course, but the fact that it was done in 1 day is nothing short of amazing. Overall, it took only 1 week. There are almost no minor corrections that would be necessary for normal work, and very little time is spent on measuring the length. I would say that the only thing that took almost no time at all was the matching of the sword by applying the blade to the body. However, it took almost a week to complete the work, so it is not easy to mass produce. All right, I guess it's done now. Inserting and removing the sword into the finished scabbard. It is neither too tight nor too loose when I put it in or cut the kiguchi. I think the most important thing is to be able to use the weapon appropriately when you want to use it, whether it's a sword or anything else. It is not good if it causes harm when you don't intend to use it, or if you can't use it when you intend to use it. That being said, I would say that the sheath I made this time is one of the best I have ever made. Is it ready? Nilda asked as if she couldn't wait to hear what I had done. Nilda was watching the whole process. Whether she was amused or watching to see if anything strange was planted, I don't know. Quote, yeah. Try it outside. Okay. Nilda grabbed the sword in its scabbard and ran outside. Chapter 158. Sword, strike, and finish. Nilda grabbed her sword and ran outside, slashed the kiguchi, and slid it out of its scabbard as the sun did its last bit of work. She tossed the sheath on the ground nearby. Ah, Nilda, it's your loss. I whispered to myself. I don't think it was that loud, but Nilda seemed to hear me. Izo, why did you say that? She looked a little sad. Sorry. It is an anecdote from my hometown. A swordsman who throws away his scabbard in a duel is told by his opponent, quote, Kojiro, you have lost. And Kojiro broke his scabbard. When Musashi Miyamoto and Kojiro Sasaki fought a duel at Ganyajima Island, Musashi is said to have said to Kojiro, who threw his scabbard at him, if he had intended to win, he would not have thrown away the scabbard that held his sword after winning. I see. Indeed, that's true. I must be careful. Nilda looks impressed. Well, it's not right to carry it on your waist with the way you're dressed now, so don't worry about it, and give it a try. I understand. Nilda quickly held her sword in the upper position and swung it downward. The most appropriate way to describe it would be beautiful. I didn't care about the color of her skin, her tattoos, or her clothes. But at the same time, I was sweating cold sweat. After seeing that flash, I was beginning to wonder if I could win a fight. Had Helen beaten that one easily? Perhaps it was the performance of the weapon or lack of familiarity with it when she attacked our wagons, but it was probably not the right sword in the first place. No wonder her movements were awkward. It seems that even my combat skills, or something like that, did not detect that much. In order not to let my inner turmoil be known, I tried my best to speak calmly to Nilda. Well. However, Nilda does not answer, but draws a variety of sword strikes, including side cleaves, cut-ups, and thrusts. She seemed to be dancing in a veil of golden light, and I forgot my impatience and watched her for a while. Eventually, Nilda stopped her dance. I called out to her again with a start. How is your sword? If you feel any discomfort, I'll fix it first thing tomorrow. Nilda still did not answer. She was shaking with the sword in her hand. Then she turns her head toward me. Oh shit, I used the knife when I made the sheath, so I don't have it on me right now. I glanced at the entrance to the workshop. If push came to shove, I would have no choice but to run in and return fire. That is if I don't get cut down before then. That's brilliant. Nilda shouted in a loud and silly voice while I was still on edge inside. Samir and the others came running out to see what was going on, and Kururu also came to check on us from the hut. Ah, no. When Nilda noticed this, she blushed and straightened her posture. This is very nice. This is a very nice sword. Ah, I see. Well, I'm glad to hear it. My heart was relieved. Samir was grinning at me. She could sense big emotional movements. Perhaps she had noticed all along that I was in a hurry just now. I am sure I was underestimating Nilda a bit, so I will reflect on that without protesting or anything, even if silently. Kururu seemed to realize that nothing was wrong and slunk back toward the hut. Seeing this, we returned to the house. Since Nilda said she would return home early the next day because there was no reason for her to stay at our house, now that the sword was completed, we made a more luxurious dinner than usual that night. The bread was not fermented bread, which I now feel is a bit of a letdown, but the meat was from a good source, and therefore was acceptable. There was no particularly important conversation during dinner. Someone talked about something trivial and everyone laughed. Such a time went on. Dinner was over and all that was left was to clean up and go to bed when Nilda said, "You guys have taken such good care of me. I'm indebted to you," she said. "You're our guest, so don't worry about it." Oh, I see. Good to know. Then Nilda got up and went into the drawing room and came back soon. In her hand, she carried a leather bag. As a guest, I must pay you a proper fee, Nilda said. How much? 30 gold pieces. I see. It is hard to get over how careless I am in this area. In our home, we get the customer's asking price for custom-made items, so you can pay whatever you want. I felt Nilda had mentioned a great deal of money, but I tried not to pay attention to that and answered. Is that so? Nilda replied, not caring about that. Izo should think about making a little more money, don't you think? Nilda's words were met with nods from Reich and Diana. Samir and Liddy seemed to be slightly puzzled, perhaps not understanding what was going on. Helen showed you the excellence of our products and you came this time, didn't you? That's how our reputation grows, we get more customers, and the special orders are a learning experience for me, so that's good. I see. Although Nilda did not seem very convinced, she seemed to accept the idea for the time being. So, this is about all I have to offer. Needless to say, the contents of the leather bag were laid out on the desk. Chapter 159. Farewell to Nilda. What Nilda laid out on the table were 10 gold coins and 1 small gem. Here's what I consider a fair reward. Take it. I checked. Surprisingly, the gold coins were the same ones that were circulating around here. She said she had business with the human world as well, so she must have gotten them there. The jewel was bright red and transparent. Could it be a red jade ruby? The installation did not tell me anything about the gemstone. Perhaps it could be processed with a cheat, but I had no idea of the type. Its size is about the fingernail of a little finger. Something was shimmering inside when I looked at it through the light of the lamp. It is a magic jewel, isn't it? As I was scrutinizing the jewel, Reich said to me, a magic jewel. A magic jewel. Something that is made of stagnant magic power that has hardened. Liddy answered my repeated words. Normally, stagnant magic power is transformed into demons, but in rare cases, it can solidify without being transformed into demons. In those cases, the magic is trapped inside and it shimmers when you shine it through the light. Is that safe? It's fine because it doesn't flow out when it happens like this. It is a pity that we can't even take it out. To show that she was fine, Liddy picked up the magic jewel in her hand. It is beautiful. The purity of the magic power is high. Yes, it is. Even in the magic world, it is a gem that can only be found once in a while. Nilda said proudly. However, the most important thing to remember is that magic is very high in the world of magic, so it must be produced in a certain amount. Maybe it's the export of these that they are doing business with the humans. What a surprise. Taking the magic jewelry from Liddy, I looked at it. Well, it must be no less than 40 gold coins. It's a jewel, so I guess it's expensive, but I don't know if it's really worth that much. They are so valuable over here that there is a possibility that the price could be higher. Reich took over. That would mean that Nilda had paid 50 gold coins or more for that sword. Are you sure? I asked Nilda. Good or bad, Izo told me to put a price on it, didn't he? To me, this value is justified. I couldn't help but laugh at Nilda's words. Then, I'll take it without reservation. Go ahead. Instead of shaking hands, we clinked cups, which were still slightly full, and gulped down the contents. The next morning, everyone in the house, including Kururu, saw Nilda off as she prepared for her trip. I told Nilda, go straight back to the demon world. I would appreciate it if you would do your best not to use it until I return. Although I was prepared for the possibility of that, it would be better if I could avoid the opportunity even for a little while. It is impossible not to use it on the battlefield, though. Although I have used forgetfulness, I have been here for a long time and have not been captured. Why should I delay now? Let's hope so. Don't take any detours, but go straight back. All right, all right. Stop talking like my sister. Nilda replied with a bitter look on her face. It seems that my sister is a very strict person. To be honest, I wish she would follow her sister's advice and return safely, but the fact that returning does not guarantee my safety evokes mixed feelings in me. Stifling these feelings, I suppressed a grin. See you later. Yeah. Nilda and I did not shake hands. I felt that it was not right for us to do so. Samir and the others must have sensed this because they said nothing. Then Nilda put on her hood and disappeared into the forest. For a while, we watched her disappear into the forest.